KNUS Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's.
KNUS Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand why this is an
agree with
issue.
that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's 6:02 in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. I think we'll get to some weather here. Should we jump into the weather?
Yeah, let's go to the weather.
All
Let's
right.
just fire it manually. Let's see what happens here. All right, here's the weather. Let's see what happens.
Your 710 5-day forecast. Going to be clear and mild as we start Tuesday. Morning temps in the mid-50s with afternoon highs in the mid-80s. It'll be mostly sunny, generally clear, low to mid-50s again Tuesday night. Wednesday morning sun, then increasing clouds, still in the mid-70s with afternoon and evening showers and scattered thunderstorms. Lows mid-40s Wednesday night. Upper 60s with showers and thunder Thursday, low 70s Friday. Weather brought to you by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather. Schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection at roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, we're up and running. Blake's going to be out the next 2 days, but we'll get him back by Thursday. It is 6:04 in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Boy, do we got a lot to cover today. John Decker, White House correspondent, is going to be joining us to give us an update on the President's trip to the Middle East. So we'll get the latest news directly from the White House, coming from John Decker, White House correspondent, coming up here in just a few minutes. Tyler O'Neill has written a piece in the Daily Signal on this Elizabeth court case over the books. That's getting even hotter. Heritage Foundation and Daily Signal now paying attention to that. We'll get the latest from Tyler O'Neill, then Rory O'Neill, no relation, will give us an update on the first day of P. Diddy Combs' trial. So testimony underway against Sean P. Diddy Combs. We'll get the latest on that trial. Gabe Evans, congressman from Congressional District 8, is going to be joining us in the 8 o'clock hour on Trump's big, beautiful bill. House Republicans getting into the details yesterday. We'll get into that. And then, Bill, there's next to abortion issues, there's probably nothing more that drives me crazier when it comes to our government than high-speed rail.
Really?
Oh, my
Interesting.
gosh.
Really?
So stupid. Nobody rides these trains, and we spend billions of dollars. And after the boondoggle that was California's high-speed rail system, well, the greenies here in Colorado want to bring it here. Who wants to ride a train to Trinidad? What's in Trinidad? Why would you take a train to Trinidad?
Well, when I lived in Pueblo, I would have taken the train to Pueblo. It would have been, I did the bus a couple of times, but yeah, you ride on that Greyhound, and you feel like you should pick up the phone and call the America's Most Wanted and say, hey, I found everybody. Meet me in Denver, and you can just cancel the show.
Bro, I had the exact same experience on Greyhound. There was one time in college where we're all like, let's take the Greyhound through the LA bus terminal to San Diego.
My God.
We had a girl with us and a bunch of guys, and we were all friends in college, and I thought she was going to get kidnapped. It was awful.
Oh, it was horrible. And so I would have. And I know they're talking about taking the train and putting it up to Granby, which would help, my family commute to a place that we've got in the mountains. But then we'd still have to drive from there. And
that's the point.
Yeah, and that's the issue is if I was going to Pueblo, I could get, because it's a small small town, you probably could get an Uber or something like that, get a friend to pick you up and take you home. Same thing here in Denver. But Granby? Trinidad? That's
Craig,
a little...
Craig, Colorado. I posted this online because there's almost nothing that drives me crazier than the idea of these trains, because there's no market demand for this.
Yeah.
And people were like, I live in Craig.
Yeah.
We have one pizza joint.
Yeah.
And a bowling alley.
The thing that makes me the most angry about this, and I can see getting up the mountain... to the ski resorts.
Ski resorts out Grand.
Yeah.
Ski resorts out.
If we were going to invest in, and I would even say high-speed rail, into the ski resorts, all in. I am all in because I want to relieve the congestion on I-70. I think it is ridiculous, both in summer and winter. And it would have to be the point where that rail needs to drop you off within walking distance of Winter Park, not in the town, and then you got to walk to the ski.
Yes, Bill Thorpe, I am with you.
It's got to be there,
because,
right there.
Look, I lived on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
Because you could take high-speed rails, but then you have subways and metros.
Yeah.
And then you have a gazillion taxi cabs that could take you to where you need to go to. Who the hell are you going to call in Craig?
Yeah.
You're just going to end up in the sticks. There's nothing out there.
No. And there's nothing out there, and the train doesn't need to run there. And again, the high-speed rail and rail systems should be moving larger amounts of people. And when we're talking about large amounts of people, the biggest problem in my estimation is, other than drive time in and around the metropolitan area, it's going to and from the mountains, either on a Friday or on a Sunday. Those are the 2 days, and so you've got to take people off of those roads. And they're telling me that this trial. We'll get into this. The train. I'm hesitant because of how they're going to go about it and where it's going to go. That eventually the idea of going down to southern Colorado doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Trinidad.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
And anytime I'm taking a train down to Colorado or traveling down to Colorado Springs, it's for like a soccer thing or a track thing. Well, I've got kids. We're going nowhere near a train station.
Yeah,
We're going out
even
to a soccer field.
And let's say that you were going to the soccer field. The idea is, then lug all the stuff onto the train, and then how do you get to the place? That's the other problem.
Sorry, I just don't go to Colorado Springs or Trinidad for any other reason.
Yeah,
and
I'm worried about when they said that the train thing is it was going to run once a day. That's like, ew. So I've got one opportunity.
You miss it. It's like the ski. I always wondered what happened to people that miss the ski train. I guess you're just like, well,
you're
get a place to stay.
Yeah, you have to, or call mom and dad. I had a couple of friends that happened that they missed the ski train coming home, and they had to call mom and dad had to call the hotel to get a credit card, and they were grounded for a while. Yeah, that's what happened. Although the ski train was fun. I had a lot of adventures on the ski train, and so that's what I see is I see that moment where you can make it work, but it has to be point to point. It has to be efficient.
It's limited, and it's really to solve a bigger problem.
Yeah, and this doesn't solve a problem.
All right, this is a guy I follow on Instagram. He's deep right into the Hollywood business operations and talking about what Trump, John Voight, Sylvester Stallone, and others are doing with regards to Hollywood. This was interesting.
Hollywood just sent the Trump administration a message. Skip the fight and fund the fix. Hi, it's producer Patrick giving you the latest in the ever-evolving film and TV industry. On May 11th, the biggest unions in the business, SAG-AFTRA, IATSE, DGA, and WGA, teamed up with major studios and stars like John Voight and Sylvester Stallone to send Trump a letter calling for a federal tax break and to bring film and TV jobs back to the United States. They want to revive 3 key tax codes, Section 199 to reward U.S. productions, Section 181 for faster write-offs, and Section 461 to help productions recover financially, as well as a push for a full domestic federal tax incentive. And here's the kicker. The letter never even mentions Trump's 100% tariff on foreign-made films. It seems that the unions want to sidestep the politics and try pushing the policies that they believe actually work. The industry is giving the administration a blueprint, and if it lands, it could get production moving in the States once again. As always, would love to hear your thoughts.
So that's a producer out of Hollywood on Instagram. And I found that interesting because we all know Hollywood is a progressive place, especially on the social issues, right? That is Hollywood. That's what makes them who they are these days. They're just a bunch of libs. But the industry's dying. It's facing really big problems for a number of reasons. One of the most notable is just its regulations. Its ability to get permits to film in Los Angeles is hard. The taxes are challenging on that. And the history was it became difficult to produce a movie in California. It just became so overregulated, so expensive. Other states started to offer incentives for people to come film. That's why in the mid-2000s, early mid-2000s, you got all these films and TV shows being made in Georgia, like The Walking Dead. At the end of The Walking Dead, you always see that peach pop up, and it was this hat tip to the fact that the series was being filmed in Georgia. So L.A., Georgia, then Georgia started to raise taxes, started to raise regulations, and people in the industry started to film outside. And in fact, some of these major movies, like Mission Impossible, don't even film in America anymore. They go outside. The result of this is the industry is collapsing here in the United States. And this includes a lot of jobs. It includes makeup artists, stuntmen, set construction people, lighting, editing, all that stuff starts to get lost. So you're having this crisis that's taking place in Los Angeles now. But what I found so interesting, Bill, is that an industry that is known for being so progressive has come up with a list of solutions that are essentially conservative free market solutions. Lower regulations on us, lower our taxes on us. Do they want to get into tariffs? Not quite yet, because they want to be able to have the freedom to film outside of the United States. I think that's the reason why. But this one industry that is well known for being so progressive, having a hard time operating under all these progressive, restrictive rules, now wants free market solutions to free up the industry so it can recover. Get rid of all of those burdens on us, get rid of all those taxes on us, and maybe the industry will be able to recover. Bill, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think they are free market proponents. That's as much as they talk about Hollywood being super lib. Yeah, they do virtue signal and everything else, but they still run things based on free market principles, based on consumerism. They don't ask the government to mandate that you see a movie. They don't mandate that the government even require distribution of the movie. They don't want the government to mandate certain ticket prices. They don't want, there are a whole bunch of things that they don't like and that they don't want. And of course, they always want to produce that movie as inexpensively as possible. That's why they've wanted to go and lean harder and harder into CGI and do things like capture the images of the actors and actresses and then be able to use those through CGI in perpetuity. Oh yeah, they're absolutely free market capitalists. That's how they made all the money, of course. So they will lean into this. I think it's very smart that the unions joined together and went after it and didn't mention the tariffs. I think that's incredibly smart because it is offering what would be a more free market conservative solution outside of the idea of tariffs. And tariffs wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have done what they needed. And do they want tax breaks? Yeah. Will they take the tax breaks? Yeah. Now, does this mean that they're going to hire? The problem that I've got inside of Hollywood right now is what they're trying to do to the writers' rooms. And so does these tax breaks really mean they're going to hire more writers? I don't think so. And so this seems to be more in some production lines and things like that. And what I'm worried about is there's a push inside of Hollywood to replace the writers' room with AI. And this doesn't necessarily solve that. Now, I don't think that's a role for the government to get involved with. This is an agreement between the union and the industry.
Yeah.
That's where that should be held. But I thought that was interesting.
Do you think AI could... my interactions with AI are they're pretty limited, but they're not all that good.
Yeah, but have you seen how much you have to pay them? Free.
Oh, the writers?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying AI. You can pay. AI is free. So even though AI sucks, remember, free is really attractive. When you've got an entire writer's room and you think you can just wash this or take an idea and wash it through AI and it'll be good enough. Yeah, because it's free. Free. Yeah.
Look, I took the UK Supreme Court case the other day, downloaded it, uploaded it into AI, and I said, summarize this. I'm a radio host, summarize this for me so I could talk about it on my show. Yeah. And it got it the exact opposite wrong.
Yeah.
Like, totally. Like, transgender rights have now been protected in the UK. And I was like, well, I think it's the reverse of that. So I haven't found AI to be all that impressive. I'm not sure Hollywood. There's just something unique about the creative mind. And I come from a family of creatives, and they're not computers. They come up with stuff that computers can't. I don't know.
Although, have you seen they're doing the live action Lilo and Stitch? Super excited, but we've done that movie before. They seem to do that a lot. They go back and reboot the movies.
Just go back and reboot it.
How many times have we rebooted Spider-Man? I'm getting a little tired of this. So again, they do go back and do it over and over again. You're like, don't have any ideas. Spider-Man! Who wants to make a Spider-Man movie? So yeah, they do run out of their creative juices from time to time, but I think it's very smart to look at the idea of tax breaks and to make it, and to incentivize, because again, if I would say that, if Donald Trump was trying to bring manufacturing or filmmaking back to the U.S. or back to a certain area, if a state was trying to advocate for it, tariffing movies or things that go on in other states and come into your state, probably not going to work out so well. But if you offer tax breaks and incentives for those businesses to come, during Donald Trump's previous administration, while he was doing a lot of the tariff stuff, he also was offering huge tax breaks to multinational corporations that would come in here and set up manufacturing facilities. And that was how he got them. It wasn't necessarily because of tariffs in the industry. It was because he was offering enormous tax breaks to them. That's a great idea.
This is an industry that is right in line with the Democrat Party.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they all endorse
on values,
on those types of things.
On the social issues, sure, but not on the business side.
And they're essentially putting in the people that are ruining their industry. So when you look at the city of Hollywood, for instance, or the state of California, it got so hard to pull a permit to be able to film there and so bureaucratic. So you're aligning yourself with people that love government. They believe that government is the solution to all their problems. And if we just add more government and tax people even more, then all of our problems are going to be solved. So they align themselves with that. They elect progressives into Hollywood, into Hollywood's leadership. They elect Gavin Newsom and the rest of them. And then they sit around and go, well, gosh, we have so many regulations on us. We can't operate. The industry is dying. Please remove the regulations, remove the tax burden from us, which is typically where Republicans operate. So the industry essentially did it to themselves. Now they want a way out. The way out, stop electing Democrats.
The thing is that it's not that simple. I mean, I understand you're painting it black and white, but do you understand why? Okay, better way to put it. Is there any sort of self-reflection as to why the conservative and Republican message hasn't resonated inside of California and inside of Hollywood? Is there any self-reflection as far as why are they not listening to what we're saying? Because it looks like on the economic side that they're closer to wanting conservative solutions than they want more, what you think to be traditionally more liberal solutions. But have we done any soul searching as to why they have rejected?
Well, they're so committed to the social issues.
Yeah, so maybe that's the problem. Maybe if you wanted to get more conservatives elected inside of California, stop playing to the social issues. Stop telling them about their social issues being the bad thing. And that's kind of what we have here in Colorado, per se. And there's that big argument about access to abortion. And someone that is going to say and going to toe the right to life line, no exceptions, never, ever, never, and everyone has to be, is not going to get elected in Colorado. You don't then...
It's just wild to me because they're literally willing to burn the city down in order to protect their right to kill a child.
Yeah, and the thing that is strange, though, is that, I mean, politics is about the art of compromise. And it's wild to me that a candidate would hold to that one issue and say if they want to, go right ahead, but understand you won't get elected. Then don't lament the fact that you didn't get elected, because that being the signpost or the one thing that you weren't willing to compromise on, because politics is the art of compromise.
There's no compromise with that other side, though.
There is.
No, there's not. There's literally no compromise on abortion with Democrats. We ran an effort to ban late-term abortion. All right, you want to have abortion? Okay. Let's just not kill the child that can live outside the womb. Failed in the state of Colorado. So it's like a religion to the Democrats. They're willing to go all the way, even if it means everything else fails. And in this case, Hollywood's a perfect example of that. Well, abortion at all costs, no matter what, even if the state collapses.
Well, the thing is that on the abortion issue, it is, when people make that the one and only issue, in my opinion, it is mutually assured destruction. Because I feel on the other side that the GOP, and again, I'm in the middle on both sides. I am not as far as Democrats with all the abortions anytime you want, whenever you want them, up to the moment before the baby is born. I'm not okay with that. But I'm also not okay with outlawing it forever, ever, under no conditions, never, 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 never. And that's the problem, is when it becomes the sole issue, there are conservatives out there that have the same thing. Never, ever, and they want it banned across the entire country and never have an exception for it. That is the exact, that's 180 degrees, but it's the exact same example of the people you were just talking about how they want late-term abortion and they want it up until the moment the baby's going to be born. That's it. And so that's the problem, is that when both sides are so dogmatic and both sides are not willing to compromise and figure out what could be reasonable, then that's where we are.
Would you have said the same thing about slavery?
Tell me the example. What do you mean by? Because
tell me where you're going with that. The battles over slavery were actually very similar to the battles we're facing over the sanctity of life. One, is it a person? How do you define a person? That type of thing. But then within the anti-slavery movement, you had people that went, these are people entirely. We need to outlaw slavery in its entirety. We need to restore civil rights to them in its entirety, And even Lincoln was like, we got to get to abolition before we can get to emancipation, and you have to move this thing forward slowly. You have an entire industry, even to half a country that relies on it economically. And if you look at the history of our country, blacks didn't get full civil rights the minute that Donald Trump, Abraham Lincoln determined that they were free from slavery.
The problem I've got
so
there,
it had to move forward.
The problem I've got there is the idea of a baby or fetus in the womb versus someone that is standing there drawing breath. And that's the problem, is because you can turn to that person that is a slave standing next to you and say, do you like pizza? What color is the sky? What is your favorite song? The child in the womb can't do any of that.
But if someone's severely handicapped, can't answer that either.
Yeah, there are ways they can.
Do you like pizza? There's people that are, in a coma that can't answer that, but we don't say that they're not human beings.
But that's not necessarily covered as far as totally as far as disabled. That normally is an injury, etc. And that's different than someone that has Down syndrome, someone that may have autism, someone like Elon that has Asperger's. So that's different as far as it. And so that's why the question is different. The question is fundamentally different.
What is a human? And when does a human being exist?
Yeah, and that's defined differently based on science and even based on religion. I mean, we've talked about a lot on the show that our brothers and sisters in the Jewish religion don't believe it's a baby until it takes its first breath, until it crosses over the birth canal.
But
so they would disagree with it. No, but they would disagree with it.
You have entities that are debating these issues, committed to these issues.
Yes.
And it's going to be part of the conversation that's taking place in our politics. But there's one side that's been willing to compromise on this in Colorado. And that was Republicans going, all right, let's do a late-term abortion ban. Democrats wouldn't even allow that. There is no exceptions, no compromise whatsoever from Democrats on this issue.
I disagree with that being such broad generalization. I believe that it is like that for some people in the Democrat Party.
I'm talking about our laws in Colorado.
I know, but I'm also talking about, but here's the thing though, is if we gave the Republicans the same legislative majority inside the state, chances are we would have a total abortion ban. And that would be viewed from the Democrats as being uncompromising. So both sides, in my opinion, do the same thing and try to do it. And so that's the problem, is I think that inside of California, to come back to where we're talking about the film industry, is the idea that the Republicans don't understand or don't read the room. Understand, you have to be a liberal Republican if you're going to get elected in many places inside of California. And if you want to move the state, then you need to let some of those social issues go and talk about the financial and sit there and say, I disagree with the way that you're living your life, but I am going to respect you enough to let you live your life. But we need to make sure that our taxes are doing this and this and this. Yeah, shouldn't all of our resources be going? And that's the problem I have, is in both the socialist issues override
Joe O'Day, and he still lost. So I don't know. Join the conversation. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line. Going back to the original discussion, Hollywood is falling apart. It's breaking down. And its solution, free markets, low taxes, low regulations. But why do they keep constantly endorsing Democrats for office? Come on. And what does abortion have to do with that? What does it have to do with them? Why don't they get on board and elect the people that would actually help their industry? Join the conversation again, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Well, living in Colorado's tough, especially with all of the crime we face here. You got to have a good alarm system to protect your business, and the best in Colorado, alarm detection systems. The highest level of service and expertise. Think about all the time you could be saving with just one source for your camera, key card access, fire and intrusion systems. ADS offers expert alarm installation and testing by highly trained technicians, 24/7 professional monitoring, same day or next day service upon request, because downtime isn't an option. Dedicated teams for cameras, access control, and fire alarms, and over 300 security professionals working for you. Choosing ADS means your business stays protected and will be ready to open tomorrow. They combine human monitoring with the latest AI camera technology to prevent crime in real time. Look, they're trusted trusted by small and large businesses, including many Colorado schools. Their security experts will review your system for free. All you got to do, go to adsalarm.com to schedule your appointment today. That's adsalarm.com. Alarm detection systems, the first choice of front-range and Colorado businesses. adsalarm.com. Will continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to be joined here by John Decker in just a minute, White House correspondent. He's going to give us the latest on President Trump's trip to the Middle East. Guy's going to come back with a new Air Force One. I can't believe they haven't updated Air Force One since George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, it is a long time.
That thing's old. Oh, lots of debate around that.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Should we be taking the free plane from Qatar? What would you advise? Trump?
Yeah, sure.
Why? What we do with it? What do we do with it, though?
Well, it's got to be retrofitted, but I do this in light of all the problems that Boeing's having.
But isn't this a Boeing plane?
Yeah, but they can't seem to get this new one off the ground, and now they're saying 2035 is when they're going to deliver. 2035.
Yeah. So if we take this one and we have to retrofit it, why do we assume Boeing is going to be better on their timeline than they are now with one of their other buildings? See, that's the part is I just don't, I don't understand why we would ever want to take the plane from Qatar. I don't. It baffles me. Other than this is probably wrong of me, but my own personal feeling is that Donald Trump wants to get it so that he can use it post-presidency. That's what he wants. He just wants a free new plane. That again, I could be, ascribing completely bad, motivations, etc. on him, but it doesn't make any sense because, he's bragging about it being a $400 million plane that they've been described as a flying palace. But the price tag of the ones Boeings are building is over $3 billion.
Right.
Yeah, but that's because of all the stuff that has to go in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have things like can the new plane that we get from Qatar can it be refueled in flight? Because if it can't serve as Air Force One.
Yeah,
can it withstand an EMP pulse from a nuclear blast?
All the stuff that we saw from Harrison Ford.
I mean, does it have
can it avoid all those?
Yeah. Does this flying palace have a medical bay that can perform sterile operations? No. I mean, does it have any of the countermeasures from attack? No. There's a whole bunch of things. Does it have any of the radar jamming? No. All that stuff's got to be put back in. The one difficulty is the passenger area is hardened against a crash. You can go ptong right into a mountain, and the passenger area is still going to be solid. How are you going to retrofit that? This makes no sense. No sense at all. Other than I want a free plane.
To me, it makes sense if Boeing's having all these problems and can't finish these planes and isn't going to deliver them for 10 more years. 10 years. So Trump's got to fly around in the same jet that was made during George H.W. Bush's time. But if the retrofits can generally be done quicker than 10 years from now, then to me it seems to make sense. But to your point, Billy, they're going to have to spend some money getting it ready. So, what do you think? Give us a call, 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Bill, I'm a little hesitant to take Mary just because we got John coming here any minute now. But
let's try to squeeze her in.
Let's see what we can do. Mary. Mary, Wyoming. Good morning, Mary. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hey, good morning, guys. I agree with you, Jeff. I do believe we should go ahead and take it. It's a 40-year-old airplane that we're allowing our president to run around. Is costing a fortune to maintain. I believe that we should go ahead and and take it. I think that we need to look at how it's being, how it's coming in. But it is a Boeing plane.
Well, and Bill brought up the point that Boeing may have to retrofit it. I actually think that Trump's looking at another defense company, if I remember correctly, of retrofitting this plane, and maybe they can get it done. But this is all based on the premise that that Boeing is taking way too long to deliver their plane. Mary, stick around for us. I appreciate it. We got John Decker, speaking of the White House, speaking of a guy who's been on Air Force One. John Decker, White House correspondent, joins us. Good morning, John.
Hey, good morning to you. Happy to pick up that conversation that you were having regarding that potential gift from the government of Qatar to the president, this 747. You know that there's been some bipartisan criticism in terms of the president possibly accepting this gift, and he has not accepted this gift just yet. Maybe he was seeing what kind of reaction he would get, before accepting such a massive gift. It's worth $400 million, this plane. It's essentially described as a palace in the sky. And the president is actually taking a tour of this plane. It was parked on the tarmac at the West Palm Beach International Airport, and the president took a tour of it. So we'll see where this goes. To me, I think it would be a violation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution, which prohibits federal officials like the president from accepting these types of gifts from a foreign government.
We know presidents have accepted smaller gifts in the past, puppies, things like that, but this is at another level. I mean, John, you travel on Air Force One. Is it getting kind of old? From my understanding, this one is from George H.W. Bush's days.
It is an older plane, but it doesn't feel old when you're on board. Yes, I think that a new plane would be fantastic. I'd love to fly on a new Air Force One too. But that being said, it's going to be a wait because Boeing is behind schedule in terms of delivering these new Air Force Ones to the president. It's a massive plane. I can tell you just, when I board it, I think to myself, there's nothing like this plane in the entire world. And there isn't. Foreign leaders themselves are envious of the president's plane, Air Force One. The president often has spoken. That's the thing he missed most when he wasn't president, was traveling aboard Air Force One. So it is a special plane that the president has, and obviously he would like to be there when the new Air Force One is ultimately delivered to the president.
That's John Decker, White House correspondent. Now, President Trump traveling to the Middle East. What does he hope to achieve with this trip?
Well, the president hopes to announce new investments in the United States. He's got three places that he's visiting during the course of this week-long trip to the Middle East. He's right now in Saudi Arabia. He'll also travel to the United Arab Emirates and also to Qatar. And the president hoping to announce some of these investments. One of the people who's traveling aboard Air Force One and traveled aboard Air Force One with the president is a Colorado resident. That's Chris Wright, the energy secretary. And perhaps there will be some energy deals that will be announced during the course of the president's trip to the Middle East.
And Chris Wright, a great friend of the show. Well, John, thank you so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show. Give us an update on what the president's doing in the Middle East.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
That's John Decker, White House correspondent. So, yeah, president hasn't indicated whether or not he's willing to accept it, but I see it as accepting a gift on behalf of the American people. I don't see it as accepting on behalf of himself. Now, if I guess he flew around post-presidency on it, then yeah, that would be a gift to himself. But this is a donation to the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, but I think the idea and what I saw was floated was that it was then going to be donated to the Trump Presidential Library or something afterwards, and of course that just means just gimme. So that'll be changed and just.
Have you ever been to the Reagan Library with the big Air Force One there? Maybe it just becomes a cool backdrop.
Yeah. Let's go to. Is it Air Force One?
Let's go to Mary in Wyoming. Good morning, Mary. Let's have you back on. Continue your thoughts.
Well, I agree with you in that as I said, I believe it's about how it comes into the thing, whether it's for government, etc. This president has been doing, the kind of work that this man has been doing and the job is just, is amazing. The amount of time, etc. I think he deserves to be able to have something that he would really enjoy. And that gold plane, I'm sorry, is something that he really would, would really benefit from as far as his ego, if you want to call it, or whatever. But I'm just saying it's how it comes in, and that he want it afterwards. I think he should be able to have it, but if he pays for it.
What?
If he pays for it, and when his time is over, he could take that plane. That's better than to me it being
like
donated to the library.
Isn't it like a lease?
That is mind-bogglingly shocking. That is scary.
Why? Because
that is scary.
it is something
I love you, Mary, but that's scary.
He's paying for it.
So what if he flies around and then at the end drops $400 million to take it home?
It's not going to be a $400 million plane at the end.
It's depreciated. You have some depreciation on it.
No, Mary, it doesn't. It doesn't, and here's why, Mary. What does that plane need in order to become Air Force One?
It has to be.
It's going to have missiles. Trump's going to be flying around with.
It also can be taken out. And they talked about it. And Jeff, I agree. I think it's kind of a little slap in the face at Boeing too, that he'd have another contractor go ahead and
I think I saw that they are. They're not the biggest defense contractor, but they're in the top 10.
But
well, Mary,
again,
we got to get to you choose the news.
That's a plane that would have to have all sorts of technological advancements. And Mary, I appreciate the phone call.
He wants to buy it. What's wrong?
No. It is because those advancements are going to be in there. So we want him to have a plane that has the ability to connect with the most classified and secure government communication systems after he's gone. No.
They could just turn it off.
Yeah. Remember when I said they could turn it off and you talked about the Wi-Fi inside of voting machines? Yeah. Nobody believed me when I was turned off. Huh. Yeah.
Good
All of a sudden now
Bill.
It's okay to turn something
Good
off. Yeah.
Point.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
We got you choose the news coming up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's that time of the morning. We bring you what you really need to get going. You choose the news.
Yes, it is that morning where we get to make questionable decisions. It's what we call You Choose the News, America's favorite fake radio news game show. Yes, I spent mere moments this morning scouring the interwebs for really dumb stories about us humans so that we can play this fake radio news game show. Why? Why would we be this irresponsible with our valuable airtime? Because nobody in charge has any idea we are doing this. So, unfortunately, it is just Jeff Hunt that is going to be choosing the stories today. In fact, we are going to call an audible. We're going to go, hey, Tony, you there? Can you hear me, man? Tony from Littleton. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. You're going to choose our second story this morning, okay? Okay, man. All right, okay. You're on hold and Blake's not here, so you're playing Blake. All right, hang on. Okay. So now, Tony from Littleton playing Blake Olson in the newsroom this morning. Okay, here we go. Here are our headlines, gentlemen. Headline number 1, missed it by that much. Headline number 2, raise your voice. Headline number 3, hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. And headline number 4, a lifetime of disappointment. Mr. Hunt, your choice.
Lifetime of disappointment.
Lifetime of disappointment. Yes, the new owners of VPN providers VPN Secure are doing their job. They are disappointing customers right out of the gate. Yes, see, if you had signed up for VPN Secure, you could have received a lifetime membership. Yes, you could just for a low, low price be secured to have VPN access in perpetuity. However, remember, a lifetime access is not your lifetime, it's the lifetime of the company. And when VPN Secure was sold, they voided the lifetime access to the service. They said, we didn't know about it. That's a former company. We are not liable for their previous liabilities. They are sending out an email to all of the people saying from the VPN Secure team, sorry about your lifetime subscription. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, I may have added the last part, but that's pretty much what it is. They now saying that you can get it for about $19 a year, just service. But yeah, that's basically it. Is they've decided that your lifetime subscription service isn't going to be honored. So remember that when you're signing up for a lifetime of service from a company, it's their lifetime, not yours.
Good reminder.
Yeah, not many people remember that. Okay, Tony, missed it by that much, raise your voice, or if hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is but a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Your choice.
Let's stay consistent with all the talk about flying, and let's do the broken wing.
Yes, the broken wing. That's Langston Hughes' poem, Dreams, and a disturbing mystery is unfolding right now in Richmond, California. Residents are hearing a loud pop, and then birds falling to the ground, dead. So far, neighbors say more than 50 birds have plummeted to the ground after perching on a specific stretch of power lines, but the power company says they're not getting electrocuted. They actually have taken the bodies of some of the birds and done an avian autopsy, and they don't show any signs of electrocution. PG&E says someone's shooting these birds, and they've seen entry wounds on a couple of them. Not on all of them, but on a couple of them.
Well,
so what they're trying to figure out. Yes, exactly. But the residents are saying it sounds more like when something electrical, like a circuit or something breaks. So
interesting.
There's some disagreement, but right now, mystery bird deaths in Richmond, California. And final choice this morning, Mr. Hunt, missed it by that much or raise your voice?
Raise your voice.
Yes, raise your voice. When Lana Love received an email from her old performing arts school about casting for a brand new HBO singing competition, she jumped at that opportunity. The New York-based singer was previously a contestant on The Voice, even had an album waiting in the wings. She thought the series, dubbed Wings of Voice, would be the perfect launch pad for her upcoming album. Winner of the show promised a chance to perform with a Grammy-winning artist. And Love said that's nice, but the exposure of just being on the HBO series would be the real prize for her upcoming musical career. She flew from home in New York to LA 3 times on her own dime, was filmed several times on an HBO soundstage, and then as they were there for the final taping, Lana Love made a shocking discovery. The show was fake. Wings of Voice wasn't a real singing competition. It was the idea of a comedic mastermind who orchestrated it slowly for the purpose of a tangential point in the plot. He was trying to train pilots how to talk to co-pilots.
Jeff and Bill.
KNUS.
has kicked off his 4-day swing through the Middle East, meeting this morning with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on an official state visit to Saudi Arabia. Kelly O'Donnell is traveling with the president.
For the president, this is an opportunity to expand the American brand and perhaps the Trump brand as well here in Saudi Arabia with important business meetings. There are partners in business from the kingdom as well as the United States who will be meeting here. The president will be talking about economic development, and he has already been treated to some of the pomp and ceremony that is a custom here in the kingdom when an important leader visits, and President Trump certainly seemed to revel in that as well.
Trump will head to Qatar tomorrow as he continues to defend a controversial plan to accept a luxury $400 million jet from that nation. He'll be in the United Arab Emirates on Thursday. Goldman Sachs is lowering its odds that the U.S. economy will enter a recession. The bank now forecasts a 35% chance, down from 45%. The cut comes after the U.S. and China agreed to reduce tariffs for 90 days amidst ongoing trade negotiations. The New Jersey native freed by Hamas is reuniting with his family after nearly 600 days in captivity. More from Kristen Marks.
That's Edon Alexander's mother in an emotional video showing the 21-year-old smiling and hugging his family in an Israeli hospital. Edon, the last living American that was being held hostage, was serving in the IDF when he was captured by Hamas. Meanwhile, a crowd of hundreds in his hometown of Tenafly cheered when hearing word of his release.
It's an emotional day. I think we've waited very long for this to happen.
After going through months and months and a year and a half of having to be with them in such a difficult time, we just want to be here for them in the happiest time.
I'm Michael Kastner.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
KNUS Denver, breaking all the rules.
Dude, stop breaking stuff.
Making up new ones.
They make the rules, pal.
And breaking those too.
And we survived just fine.
Jeff and Bill on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's 7:02 in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up here in just a second, Tyler O'Neill with the Daily Signal. Judge blocks school board from removing explicit books, saying it's unconstitutional to follow conservative values. How dare you, conservatives? We're going to talk with Tyler in just a second. We'll go back to the phone lines. Tony Littleton. Good morning, Tony. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. So your topics of Hollywood and the plane, and they all are kind of interrelated. Let's start with the plane. The way this goes down is the gift would be made to the military first, and the military would go through tens, if not $100 million, to turn it into an Air Force One plane. Then Trump would get to use that, and then when he's out of office, they would spend tens or hundreds of millions pulling all that gear back out, and it would be donated to his library, which means basically he could fly anywhere he wants. And it's not going to be parked in a building in a hangar and let people tour it. He would get to use it anytime he was on library business, I guess, and he could be on library business for the rest of his life talking to people about donating money. So it's for him to use it. And you have people like Mary saying, that's great. He's worked so hard. He deserves to have that. He should have something nice. And Jeff, I guess I think I'm hearing you defending that, him having a right to.
I think part of the equation is how Boeing's failed to deliver.
Okay, so would you, if that plane had been given to Biden, he was flying in the plane. If they had stepped up and said, hey, we're going to give you that plane, would you be on the air right now saying, hey, that's no problem. He can fly that plane. We need it. It's a 40-year-old plane. Let him fly that plane.
I think you have to take into the equation that Boeing's failed to deliver.
But they failed to deliver just 3 months ago. So I'm just saying to you, I'm asking you a straightaway question.
No, Tony, they're not going to deliver until 2035. This thing's delayed 10 years.
I understand. I'm saying to you, but 4 months ago, if it had been given to Biden, same exact thing. Hey, Boeing failed to deliver. We want you to have this palace in the air, and then after it's over, you can put it in your library and use it for the rest of your life. Are you okay with that? Just a straightaway question. Are you okay if that had to happen to Biden?
The only concern I would have is Hunter's use of the plane.
So you're okay. So you're okay if Biden had it.
Yeah. Okay. To me, the big part of this equation is Trump's flying around in a plane that was built during George H.W. Bush, and now is not going to get a plane that's not going to be delivered for 10 more years. I think that's
this is why Republicans not being elected.
It's not just a gift going to Donald Trump.
Okay. Well, it is a gift to him after his term is over. He's going to get to keep that plane for the rest of his life. So it's a gift. It is a gift.
And we still don't have an Air Force One. Yeah, it wouldn't solve the necessary underlying problem. The other thing I have in this entire equation is we understand the transactional nature of Donald Trump, and that worries me because when has Trump ever given someone a large gift of hundreds of $millions and not expected something in return? That's kind of how he operates, and
could be
that's what I'm worried about. But again, he talks about his military. He talks about putting his justices on the Supreme Court. He's a transactional nature. So if he gets a gift of $400 million from another country, do you think that country doesn't expect anything in return? Do they think they don't think they have any sway over him?
No president has received a gift of anything of that value ever. We had an ethics department that would look at that and say, that's way outside the line. I mean, the most you might get is a painted picture. That's the biggest gift that I think any president has ever received, is a painted picture, not a plane worth $400 million. And the only reason it's not being attacked by the ethics department is he fired the entire ethics department when he took office. There's nobody there saying you can't do that. And he's got his toe in the water to see how are Americans going to respond to the idea of him receiving a $400 million gift. And Billy, you have hit on something really important. Remember, the Saudis have put $2 billion into his son-in-law's company. They're now all kinds of people from the Middle East are buying his crypto, and we don't even know who they are because that remains silent. He's making billions of dollars, especially off the Middle East. So we should be concerned about that. Jeff, I don't think you are. You don't appear to be. And this is why.
Tony, there's other parts of the equation. Boeing hasn't delivered. We're flying around in old planes. All that stuff. I think
any of these gifts. You're not concerned about the crypto business either.
Not really.
Right? You don't care about that.
Not really.
This is why this ties back to Hollywood. You asked why do they not just appoint Republicans? They have in the past. They've had Republican governors. Right now.
And Hollywood was
the difference is its values. It's more than one issue. It's values.
I know. And they'd rather watch their industry sink and tank.
No, they have to make some adjustments, and they know that. And Newsom is lowered taxes. He's trying to put out incentives. He's trying to take some corrective steps that would be conservative in nature, and that is fair game, but not MAGA in nature. And
Tony,
so right now, California.
That was a fun conversation. We've got a guest coming up, and I'm going to get to him. Tyler O'Neill with the Daily Signal now joins the Jeff and Bill Show. He's got a great piece out on what's happening here in Elizabeth. Judge blocks school board from removing explicit books, saying it's unconstitutional to follow conservative values. Tyler, thank you for joining the Jeff and Bill Show this morning.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Great piece in the Daily Signal. You've dove into these decisions, especially coming from this judge, Charlotte Sweeney, who is starting to make national news because she's not only going after the Elizabeth School Board, but she's putting in injunctions against President Trump now. She's just a radical lefty, right? Is that what you kind of found out about her?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems on the surface. I mean, at the very least, what we saw here in this case, she is creating a very weird precedent that thankfully, has been appealed to the Court of Appeals. The case is before them now. Unfortunately, she also issued an injunction, and that injunction has been allowed to stay for the time being while the case is on appeal. Essentially what happened was the school board there in Elizabeth decided through a long process, of engaging with citizens, with parents, with members of the community to remove certain books or restrict certain books from school libraries. And these are books that were flagged for potentially inappropriate, you're talking explicit content, you're talking content that, is not appropriate for kids of a certain age. And so they wanted to have a system, and they set up a system where if a child wanted to check out a certain book, it would be flagged to their parents, and their parents would be able to have the say as to whether or not the kid could check out the book. And then there were some books that they just removed entirely. The ACLU in Colorado filed a lawsuit on behalf of, this is crazy, by the way. Like there's a preschooler, and then there's a high schooler who had never checked out these books, never tried to check out these books, and they had a suit filed on their behalf from the ACLU of Colorado and a few other organizations that was saying this is unconstitutional to remove these books from these schools. And they got this very left-leaning judge who found, she twisted the law and was able to say, oh, well, their own claims that these books might not have been age appropriate, those claims are pretextual. Really, this is them applying their conservative values in a way that violates the Constitution. And so she ruled very heavily against the school district. Never mind that the district had gone through this process. Never mind that members of the school board had testified, in written under oath statements saying that they removed the books for content reasons, not because of ideological biases. The judge threw all that aside, said that all of that was pretextual, and that it was unconstitutional to act on conservative values in removing these books, which creates a very weird precedent that, according to the school district's lawyer, saying that under this precedent, any conservative school district could remove any book and have it challenged and thrown out because of their conservative values. So this is a very, very weird case. This is a very bizarre ruling from this judge. Hopefully the appeals court is going to overturn it. But we see on these cultural issues, we've seen time and time again, the left demonizing anyone who dares to remove sexually explicit books from school libraries or wants them removed. We've seen parental rights groups put on a map with the Ku Klux Klan over this issue, being compared to the Uptown Klans of the 1950s that opposed Brown v. Board of Education. I mean, this sort of rhetoric is twisting the issue and presenting it as though it's an issue of hate, when really it's all an issue of, these are school libraries. These books are not being banned. They're not being pulled off of the market. These books are being taken out of an area where, kids can access these books in the library, and having a book in a school library sends a message, at least according to this school district. They say that this curation decision is government speech, and I think there's a lot of good precedents to back up that claim.
That's Tyler O'Neill. Tyler's the senior editor of the Daily Signal. He's got a new piece out in the Daily Signal about this Elizabeth School Board. And now we've hosted the superintendent, attorneys talking about this case, because this is one that could go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, Charlotte Sweeney is important to understand. She's the judge in all this. She's a federal judge appointed by Joe Biden, nominated by John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennett. And in a DU alumni magazine about her, Tyler, she talks about how she was very happy just being an activist. She was active in equal pay issues. She sits on the board of the Matthew Shepard Foundation, which is an LGBT organization out of Wyoming. She's a lesbian woman. She's very happy to be an activist. She says, until 2016. Then in 2016, with the election of Donald Trump, she said she had to do more. She gets appointed, signs up to become a judge, gets appointed during the Biden administration. And when Trump goes out there and says, look, we have these judges that are just liberal activists that are doing everything they can to stop the Trump agenda. And in this case, she's filed injunctions against President Trump on efforts to deport. Then this case comes up to her desk. She's an LGBTQ activist. She sees a small conservative rural district here in Colorado. She specifically rules against them without ever looking at the content of the books.
Yeah.
I mean, this is pure leftism, activism in its purest form.
Yeah, she rejected having an evidentiary hearing. And I mean, this is the really, really shocking decision that she made here, because not only, she took these statements that had been made outside of court contexts, outside of official proceedings, and she said, based on these statements that some of the school board members made, as opposed to their actual affidavits, as opposed to looking at the actual books in question. The judges or the lawyers for the school board asked for a hearing where they could go through and show, like, this book has this in it. This is why it's concerning for us. Instead of going through that process, she just immediately rules, oh, their reasons were pretextual. And, if that doesn't seem like a biased twisting of the evidence and facts in the case, I don't know what does.
Tyler, I want to point out, too, in this particular case, that with her and the school board and the battle over parents' rights is that she is forcing these books back into the school. Now the superintendent has chosen to close the library for the remainder of the year so that no kids can access these because they're concerned about these books. And here's a really important point about all this, about her ruling, okay? She goes with these books that the reason you took these books out is because you are opposed to the LGBTQ community. You're racist in some cases, all this stuff, okay? Simple question, simple rebuttal. Are there still LGBTQ books in the library? Are there still books by black authors in the library? If the school board is motivated by an animus towards a certain race or a certain class of people like the LGBTQ community, well, then clearly all books about the LGBT community would be out, right? But they're not.
Yeah, no, and that's the key thing here is we see over and over again this rhetoric that the left is using where they'll take these books that are extreme, that have things that most people, if you look at the books, would say, this should not be in a school library. This is not the kind of thing that kids should read. These stories can be traumatizing. They can be very, some of them have explicit imagery that does not belong on school property, much less, in the hands of a child. And the left takes it and says, no, this is evidence that you hate all people of a certain race or of a certain background. And it's like, no, this has to do with the specific content here. And one of the unfortunate things about this whole discussion is that you can't present the clear evidence on cable TV, on certain platforms, because it is too explicit, because you don't want your show demonetized, deboosted, deplatformed, and you can't actually hold up the picture. But many times, in these school board meetings, you've had these parents, rightly outraged parents, going to the school board meeting and holding up pages of the book saying, here is your evidence. Look at it. This isn't a confusing issue. This is black and white. And by the way, many members of the LGB community, I think of an organization like Gays Against Groomers, which is very explicitly L, G, and B, but they don't always, and some of their members are also identify as transgender, but they don't want gender ideology and they don't want sexually explicit materials in school libraries for young children. And they're standing up. And if what the left was saying about all this stuff was true, gays against groomers shouldn't exist. So lo and behold, the Southern Poverty Law Center puts gays against groomers on their hate map, categorizing them as an anti-LGBTQ plus hate group. In other words, as the founder Jamie Michelle told me, we're anti-ourselves. It's insane that they do this, but at the same time, these are the lengths to which the left goes to silence their critics when their critics are, as in this case, 100% correct.
That's Tyler O'Neill with the Daily Signal. He's got a new piece out with regards to the Elizabeth School Board lawsuit that's taking place. And I want to talk about the ACLU. You wrote a great book called The Woktopus, the dark money cabal manipulating the federal government. I've run up against this time and time again at the Colorado State Capitol. Used to run lobbying teams down there. We go down, testify, and you would watch these Democrat lawmakers introduce bills that they never wrote. That were put together by some special interest group. And I learned over time that the ACLU was oftentimes driving the legislation that's being passed at the state capitol. Think about the radical transgender bill that took place 1312 here in Colorado, made national news. Some of these anti-gun bills, all this stuff oftentimes written and promoted by the ACLU. And in this case, the ACLU filing the lawsuit against this small Elizabeth school district, this rural school district. Talk to us about the power and the influence of the ACLU.
Yeah, well, the ACLU's power is tremendous. And what we saw in the Biden administration, one of the key impacts that they had, I think it was the ACLU and the Center for American Progress that really spearheaded the general approach to open borders, what became a lot of Biden's open borders policies. And you see the ACLU and the Center for American Progress writing these documents where they say, we need to treat immigration as an asset to be managed rather than a crime to be enforced against. And they were calling for this overall approach at the Department of Homeland Security. But, what I found with the Woktopus, and one of the reasons I wrote the book, was because I saw that the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, is the tip of the spear when it comes to demonizing conservatives and Christians, putting mainstream conservative and Christian groups on a map with the KKK because of what they believe, and acting as though the same sort of hate drives the Klan and mainstream conservatives. I mean, it's a complete fabrication. But the SPLC has gone through scandal after scandal after scandal. I mean, if you want an organization that is credible, that is reliable, that should be cited on either side of the aisle, the Southern Poverty Law Center is the last thing you should think of. And yet, in the Biden administration, they had tremendous impact and reach. In the Biden White House, in the Justice Department, they were cited by the FBI. They were advising the Department of Education, one thing after another. And so I thought, well, if even the SPLC can have this sort of impact, what other groups are also infiltrating and advising the Biden administration? And I started doing some digging and found a host of far-left groups. But one of the main ones, as you've noted, is the ACLU. And all of this boils down to what I describe as woke, the confluence of four ideologies: critical race theory, gender ideology, climate alarmism, and a preference for technocratic government. And these things all create a coherent worldview where you are bringing all of these very leftist positions together. And if you start using the leftist lens to look at an issue like race, and you start to say, oh, well, America is intrinsically racist or institutionally racist, and it's something in our DNA, and we can't really get rid of it. And so we need to have, long-standing, quotas essentially to reverse the racism in our society. That's the basic idea behind CRT. If you have this Marxist synthesis in CRT, you can very easily apply it to gender ideology, and then they also mash it over with climate alarmism in what they call environmental justice. But all of this supports this preference for technocratic government, where you have the administrative state calling the shots, these bureaucratic experts that they trust. And they often say that the bureaucrats, the experts, aren't political. But if you actually look at it, the bureaucrats are political. The bureaucrats are human beings just like you and me. They have biases. And so when you're outsourcing lawmaking to a bureaucracy or to a nonprofit, there are problems with that even when those organizations are truly trying to be middle of the road. And a group like the ACLU, they're applying woke. So you notice, the gender ideology doesn't really have that much to do with free speech and freedom, with the nature of what the ACLU always said that it was about. And yet they're pushing gender ideology to the nines. And they're pushing immigration in particular. And they're saying that every sort of immigrant needs to have a specific process if they're going to be deported. And, I feel for some of these immigrants, especially those who the Biden administration brought over. They're still illegal, but they may not have known that they were brought over illegally under the Biden administration. But it's one thing, when this is such a catch-22, because you have Biden bringing in 10 million illegal aliens in the last 4 years, and then Trump wants to try to deport them. Biden brings them in without due process, and yet Trump, if he wants to deport them, has to go through all these loops that the ACLU is trying to put in place. Meanwhile, the ACLU is also the organization that helped advise the Biden administration to import all these illegals in the first place.
It's almost like books going into the library. Once you get them in, they're very, very difficult to get out. Well, Tyler O'Neill, I know you've got to run. Great piece in the Daily Signal. He's a senior editor for the Daily Signal. Go check out his piece, Judge Blocks School Board from Removing Explicit Books, saying it's unconstitutional to follow conservative values. He's a great follow on X as well. Follow him at Tyler2O'Neill. Tyler2O'Neill. Great work over at the Daily Signal. Tyler, thanks for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thanks so much again for having me, Jeff.
All right, let's talk, guys. Advanced hair restoration. If you're losing your hair, you need a simple solution that works. You want the best. Modern technology with top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration from the experience itself to their unmatched results. Receding hairline, bald spot, thinning hair, address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments. And get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the Advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It starts with your free consultation. Call 720-459-HAIR. 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to get to the phone lines in just a second, but joining us now, Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent. Testimony is underway in the case against Sean P. Diddy Combs. Rory O'Neill has the details. Rory, give us an update. How did the first few days of testimony go?
Yeah, so we had opening statements and two witnesses testify yesterday. One was a security guard who responded to that video where we've seen P. Diddy appears to be abusing his girlfriend at the time, Cassie Ventura. They also heard testimony from a male prostitute who went into explicit detail about what he was brought in to do with Ventura, who they claim was drugged up and, like other women, was essentially forced on drugs for days to take part in these freak-offs. Well, today, Ventura is taking the stand there in New York. It's a federal trial happening in a courtroom that has no cameras, no microphones, so we're not going to get any video of the testimony, but we're getting those weird, sketchy drawings instead. But it's some pretty graphic stuff the jury's going to hear for the next few weeks.
That's rough. Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent. So, Rory, what's the defense's argument?
The defense essentially is saying that, yes, our client is a perverted jerk. That's the defense, but he's no criminal. They're saying that, yes, he has anger issues and abuse issues, and he's maybe not, and perhaps sexually deviant, enjoying these freak-offs, but they say this does not rise to a federal crime. Remember, he's charged with 5 federal counts, including sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, and even racketeering to arrange all of this. These sex parties were held for days on end at different locations. Diddy and his company are accused of hiring these prostitutes, bringing them in, sometimes paying them, sometimes drugging people against their will to participate.
That's Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent, because I imagine it's a bit of a blurry line, right? You're going to party with a rap star. Well, there's just certain things that seem to come with that: alcohol, drugs, sexual activity. But when you mix them together and you get into whether or not people are held against their will, whether or not they've been coerced, filmed, blackmailed, that's where the crime seems to come in. Is that right?
And paid for, in particular. 2 of the counts are transportation to engage in prostitution. So if paid prostitutes, men and women, were being brought into these parties, especially over state lines, that's when Uncle Sam gets involved and can bring some of these charges. And they're serious. Diddy is now 55 years old. Convictions could likely mean he'd spend the rest of his life in prison. And we're just talking about the criminal stuff. He's got civil charges, probably filed by nearly 100 people now. And, of course, this is all before we get to see the video evidence. When the FBI and other agencies raided Diddy's homes in Miami and Los Angeles, they recovered an awful lot of video. And there are a lot of A-listers in Hollywood concerned that some of these videos may get out there.
Wow, that's Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent. Testimony is now underway in the case against Sean P. Diddy Combs. What's his demeanor been like in the courtroom? Have you heard from reporters about that? The guy's been locked up for quite a few months now.
Yeah, since last fall, he's been in custody in that same jail where Luigi Mangione is being held, by the way, and Sam Bankman-Fried, the FTX crypto guy. He has shown to be polite, standing up when he was introduced to the jurors yesterday, and trying to show that again, I mean, they're trying to walk this fine line is the problem of, yes, he's a perverted deviant, but he's not a criminal. So that's going to be a tough one to walk. And then clearly these women, with the girlfriend first being shown, being attacked and abused outside those elevators, now the defense is going to have to try to cross-examine her and say, well, you were volunteering for this, or you wanted this. And that's going to probably not sit well with some of these jurors that she was a willing participant. That's going to seem very hard to believe.
And this follows on the heels of a lot of other high-profile celebrities essentially doing jail time for this type of behavior. You go back to Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, others. It seems like juries, the general public's kind of had enough of this type of activity. And if you've been engaging in what Sean P. Diddy Combs has been charged with, well, then you might face some jail time.
And Gerard Depardieu just a few hours ago.
That's right.
In Europe. So, these are the reckoning, I suppose, that women, either through video evidence that is now available out there, or feel that they have the support in order to bring these allegations. Because, one of the victim number 3, as she's being called now, she's essentially gone off the radar ahead of her testimony. She's so concerned about her own safety and the pressure she's been under about what she's going to testify to, about how she was paid to take part in these events. And then when she was paid to be there, then you're drugged beyond whatever, so that you don't really know what you're doing when you're there.
Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent. How long is this trial expected to take?
Yeah, maybe up to 2 months. They're saying 8 weeks. Usually they always overestimate those things, so probably closer to 6. But wait and see. Again, it's going to be a difficult line for the defense here when they're cross-examining these women, because essentially the feds only have to show that there was money paid, and they're halfway home. When it comes to prostitution charges and trafficking.
Wow, Rory O'Neill with the latest on the P. Diddy Sean Combs trial taking place in New York City. Thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show. Give us an update.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Joe in Arvada. Joe, good morning. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff, Billy. This federal judiciary has been corrupt for a long time. On the whole, it's far left. The problem is you're getting these judges like Boasberg and Sweeney that are making now national decisions, but it's been happening at our level here in Colorado for a while. And here, something that happened yesterday, I listened to George Brogler, excuse me, and he's right about, we shouldn't just vote no if this was the normal world, but on judges. But see, it's just like suspending habeas corpus. Nobody wants that to happen, but the Biden administration really did that. What they did is these people are all far left in control, so they overlooked the law. They didn't really suspend habeas corpus, but what they did is they ignored it. And when they let all these people in, they ignored habeas corpus. So my point is that there is a way to solve some of these things. One is that, in the case of immigration, yes, President Trump needs to temporarily suspend habeas corpus get these people out, and then reinstall it, and then they can fight through the legal system to get them back in one at a time.
Now, what do you mean what do you mean by suspending habeas corpus? How do these people one by one then fight through the legal system if habeas corpus was suspended?
Well, see, that's what it is because we had an invasion. I know you don't agree, Billy. That's okay.
Yeah, it's not an invasion.
Because we had an invasion, that we have to get the invaders out, and then habeas corpus is suspended because everybody knows we can't spend 50 years getting each one a court trial. So that we get them out, and then go ahead and let it be reinstalled, and let them all fight to get them back in. That way, we can look at each one and say, no, that guy. If you want to go ahead and spend all your money left, nut jobs, go ahead and spend all your money on getting them back in one at a time.
Okay, so I got a question on that, Joe. I got a question on that as far as the suspension of habeas corpus. Let's say that your neighbor has the last name of Garcia, has been in the country for a long period of time. You don't know their, whether or not they were born here. They get arrested and picked up by ICE. Now,
great.
I know, but you're talking to their family. Family's been here for generations and are naturalized citizens. Right. Yeah, but he's been picked up.
They can fight through the system to get back in.
No, they can't, Joe.
That's right.
Joe, they can't because, Joe, I'm going to complete speaking here. You got a chance to lay out your list. I'm going to talk for a second. Sorry. If we suspend habeas corpus, your neighbor, regardless of immigration status, doesn't get to challenge their arrest. That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything else?
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Well, here, this is the same argument.
No, are you? No, Joe. Are you okay with that? Yes or no?
Let me finish my sentence.
Are you okay with that? Yes or no? Joe, answer the question. Joe, answer the question. Are you okay with this? Yes or no?
You see, yes or no is not what this situation requires. It requires a suspension of the judicial system and habeas corpus.
Yes, and that's what I just asked you about, Joe. Are you okay with that?
I am answering.
Good.
If you'll let me answer.
I would love to hear the answer.
I'm answering. Let me answer. This is exactly like when people say, well, one person can be guilty or what if 1 million people are found guilty and one innocent person is found to be guilty, then let's not have any judgments at all. Let's not have any judicial system. We got to suspend all lawfare, all legal systems, because one person that was innocent is found guilty. No, the 1 million people that were guilty still need to go, but we could go ahead and then fight through the judicial system on whether that one innocent person should be set free.
Joe,
this is exactly the same situation.
Joe,
you have millions of people that should be removed.
Habeas corpus. You can't.
Millions of people should be removed, and if there is one person that is not supposed to be removed, we'll have to fight to get him back in.
How do we decide who's going to be removed?
That's the deal.
How do we decide who's going to be removed?
That's why the administration was elected. The people that elected Donald Trump, the United States of America, that elected Donald Trump is going to have decided to get rid of those people. See, that you may not have voted for Donald Trump, but here's the thing.
Less than 50% of the electorate voted for Donald Trump, to be fair.
Most of us did.
No, less than 50%, Joe. Less than 50% of the electorate voted for Donald Trump. And nowhere in that did he talk about the suspension of habeas corpus. And in all your idea is, well, if it's wrong, you can go back and challenge it. No, that's the problem, Joe. If you suspend habeas corpus, you have no remedy. You don't get to have your day in court and say, I didn't commit this crime. I'm a legal citizen. You don't get a chance to prove that. You're on a plane to El Salvador.
Do you think Lincoln was wrong to do that?
That is a different time.
Yeah, I mean, but during that time, do you think he was wrong to do it?
I got some issues with it, but not necessarily. But I do have some issues with it. I do have some issues as far as how he was going about it, etc. I do think there were some things that was a little bit of a problem, but different time and different scenario. It's not even close to what we're doing with now. Here, we're just rolling around picking up people.
So in some cases,
just deciding. In a lot of cases. Because
with regards to Lincoln, if the situation warrants it, suspending habeas corpus is okay.
Again, what the situation is.
Yeah.
What's that situation?
Right.
And so the thing is that I'm not going to be dogmatic and say never, 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 because I believe you can create a situation and there are issues and where yes. Nor am I going to go the other way. I don't necessarily operate in extremes. That's why I push back on the idea that all Democrats do this. Just like when Joe comes on here and says, all these liberal judges. I disagree. There are a handful of them, yes, just like there are a handful of conservative judges. But I disagree with this broad brushstroke, just like I won't say that universally that, no, we don't do it. Yes, we don't. Yes, we do it. No. There are situations, but this is not one of those. This doesn't reach that level. It's that simple.
All right, join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplos Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great conversations this hour with Tyler O'Neill, Rory O'Neill. Different spelling of their last name, actually.
Yeah.
No relation. Tyler from Daily Signal joined us to talk about the latest on the Elizabeth School Board case, Rory O'Neill on the P. Diddy case. You think P. Diddy survives this, Bill?
It depends on what you mean by survive. Is he going to be
innocent?
Oh no. And again, his reputation is going to be tarnished no matter what. I lived through the OJ trial. I'm never going to say that someone's going to absolutely get jail time. I can't do that anymore because I was convinced
Chris Rock
OJ was going
on OJ.
Yeah,
he wasn't found not guilty because he's black. He's found not guilty because he's rich.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but that's changed, I think, a little bit.
Sean Combs is very, very rich.
So I think it's changed in the sense that it's kind of like the revenge of Mike Pence in many ways. Like, you live the crazy lifestyle, it's going to catch up with you.
I don't know. For me, it comes down to, are the prosecutors any good? If the prosecutors going after him are pretty good, then he's got.
It's an all-female team, Bill.
See what happens. Again, don't know. I don't know their background. Again, not going to operate in generalizations. Not going to say because they're women, they're great or not.
Well, we'll be continuing to cover that case in the 8 o'clock hour. Gabe Evans joins us. We'll make some news. You're going to listen to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
President Trump met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman this morning on an official state visit to Saudi Arabia. It's the first stop on his 4-day swing through the Middle East, during which several deals and agreements are expected to be announced as the president travels with business leaders, including Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Alice Barr with more.
This trip underscores how influential this region has become economically. Right after President Trump took office, the Crown Prince pledged to make $600 billion in investments in the United States over the next 4 years. The U.S. is hoping to secure even more during talks today. His next stop is Qatar, where the ruling family has offered the president a luxury Boeing jumbo jet to use as Air Force One.
GOP Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky says Trump has no business accepting a gift like that.
The Constitution in Article 2 talks about the president can't take emoluments or gifts from foreign leaders. And so there is a provision in the Constitution that says you can't do this.
Federal employees cannot accept gifts over $20. The annual inflation rate dropped to 2.3% in April, lower than expected and the lowest since February of 2021. Markets had expected the consumer price index to increase to 2.4%. The White House is blaming the Biden administration for problems at Newark International Airport. More from Brian Shook.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the airport is using old equipment that looks like it's off the set of the movie Apollo 13, and that's dangerous.
The outage also interrupted the phone line and radio frequencies for a very short period. This is how controllers talk to pilots.
Duffy said former transportation head Pete Buttigieg ignored the problems with the airport's telecommunication lines. Duffy said there are some temporary software fixes in place, but warned it will take time to modernize the airport.
I'm Michael Kastner.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
KNUS Denver. KNUS Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can
Let's
get.
kick it off. It's the 8 a.m. hour here on the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations, you're waking up in the greatest country in history. Let's go. Great hour ahead of us is Gabe Evans is going to join us in just a few minutes. Congressman from Congressional District 8, that's the northern part of Denver. We're going to talk about Trump's big, beautiful bill and whether or not Republicans can get it across the finish line, and talking about some of the cuts that may be coming as well. So, not going to want to miss that conversation. In the meantime, let's go to the phone lines. Jack in Wyoming. Good morning, Jack. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Yeah, you guys are concerned about habeas corpus. You're lucky you don't own trucks. There's people that own trucks. Every year, the entire country has this week, 3 or 4 days of this week, or it's in June, and they do inspections. They pull every 18-wheeler they can have over on the side of the road, and they inspect the vehicles and the paperwork and everything else. And then they find violations. Well, they're not looking for violations like you would think of as a speeding violation, where you could go to court, where you would have habeas corpus. You would be in person in front of a judge. They don't do that. What they do is they take you out of service, and that's their discretion to do that. And when they do that, that goes on a computer. And you don't have habeas corpus. You don't have a way to stand up and argue it. You don't have any way to reason with it. You don't have any way to reverse it. So you're already guilty. Lack of habeas corpus. They write a ticket saying you're out of service. That's it. Now they don't punish you for that directly, but when it goes on the computer, when your insurance company looks up on the computer, it's called safer.org with your DOT number, and they say you were taken out of service. All of a sudden, your trucks are not $3,000 a year to insure. They're $6,000, $8,000, or $9,000. And if you have a fleet of trucks, they can put you out of business. Now, the government's not putting you out of business. Your insurance company is, based on being placed out of service, and you don't have any habeas corpus to fight it with. Buy some trucks, guys, and find out about it.
Jack, I think habeas corpus is the idea that you don't get your time in court, right? You can just be imprisoned.
Well, habeas corpus means in person. That's what it means. It's Latin.
Yeah, it means show me the body, right?
Yeah, the body.
So the idea
yes,
being
that
if you want to imprison me, if you want to fine me, if you want to bring the weight of the government against me, you have to at least there has to be a time in criminal court where this is explored. With the example you give, don't you have the opportunity to go challenge these before court?
No, that's my point, and that's lax. There was a saying 1,000 years ago. I think it was in Germany or somewhere, and I think it goes like this. He says, it was in Ireland. When I returned to Dublin, I found I have been tried and convicted in my absence.
Yeah.
And then he says, he pauses. He says, so I told them they can hang me in absentia.
Well, the last question I've got for you, Jack, we got to move on to Gabe Evans here in a sec, but I got a question for you. Do you think that this approach that you outlined for truckers is how we need to approach everybody in immigration? And if it works well with immigration, shouldn't we just approach that in all criminal cases? Are you advocating for this approach to truckers? Are you saying the way the truckers are treated is wrong and should be changed? What's your position on it?
Well, my position, the purpose of my call is to tell you that lack of having legal representation, which is habeas corpus, on an issue is denied to the people in the trucking business. So it's not exclusive to the issue that you're talking about. The government has ways of doing it, although they're not the ones doing the penalty. They're filing the out of service, and your insurance company is the one that penalizes you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jack. I appreciate it. Jack from Wyoming. All right, joining us now, the Congressman from Congressional District 8. That's the northern part of Denver. Gabe Evans, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, always great to be on with y'all.
All right, Trump's big, beautiful bill is working its way through House, revealing some of its details yesterday. Can you tell us about the bill?
Yeah, so here's ultimately what the bill is aiming to fix. Right now, Americans are facing the largest tax increase in history if we don't get this thing passed. I'll give you three quick examples. The child tax credit is currently $2,000 due to expire at the end of the year. It'll go down to $1,000. So then that's $1,000 additional federal tax burden for families with kids. Small business tax rate. It's currently at 21%, which is the same level as the corporate tax rate, but the small business tax rate is set to double at the end of the year and go up to about 43%. That's going to crush small business, who, of course, also won't be able to compete on a level playing field with the big corporations. The final one is the standard deduction. So in Colorado, the bottom 84% of wage earners, I'll say that again, this is the bottom 84% of wage earners take the standard deduction. So I did my taxes this year, I think it was $29,200 for married filing jointly. That's $29,200 that you don't pay taxes on. That standard deduction for married filing jointly, for single, for head of household, that is due to be cut in half at the end of the year. That's going to result in a tax increase on the average family of four in Colorado by over $2,000 if we don't get this big, beautiful bill fixed. So it is moving forward. That's why we're doing all of this work. It's ultimately to make sure that we're putting more money back in people's pockets and we're protecting these tax cuts and keeping them from expiring.
That's Gabe Evans, Congressman from Congressional District 8. Now, your colleague, Jason Crow, running around, especially on social media. We know the guy loves to be on TV, but he's going, Medicaid cuts are coming. Medicaid, big cuts coming to Coloradans that use Medicaid. What's your response to your colleague, Jason Crow?
I sit on the committee that oversees Medicaid. We're actually about to go into a committee markup on it today. Anyone that says Medicaid is getting cut has not looked at the bill text. Under the Republican plan, Medicaid will continue to grow every single year. What we are doing is getting the fraud, waste, and abuse out of Medicaid so that the program is actually not just financially viable, but it's more efficient and it works for the people that actually rely on this critical service. So, no, Medicaid spending will increase every single year under the Republican plan. We're going after the fraud, waste, and abuse, and unfortunately there's a lot of it in the system.
Well, and it seems, too, that you guys are implementing some work requirements with Medicaid. And so that seems to be where the Democrats are basing some of their arguments that people are going to face cuts from Medicaid because, God forbid, you might have to go to work. Help me understand that.
So the Medicaid program was originally conceived to take care of are most vulnerable: pregnant women, kids, people with disabilities. And so that is what's called the original population. Right now in Colorado, the original population, pregnant women, kids, people with disabilities, receive $1 federal dollar for every $1 state dollar. In 2014, I believe, President Obama then came up with what was called the expansion population. The expansion population is able-bodied, working-age adults who are just lower income. And when that expansion population was invented, they ended up being subsidized at $9 federal dollars for every $1 state dollar. And so all we're doing is we're not even changing that $9 federal dollars for every $1 state dollar rate. All we're doing is we're saying if you are an able-bodied, working-aged adult, and you are being subsidized at $9 federal dollars for every $1 state dollar, you have to work part-time. It's not even full-time work that's the requirement. It's part-time work for able-bodied, working-aged adults.
That's Gabe Evans, Congressman from Congressional District 8. Now, Rand Paul over the weekend saying he's not going to support the bill because it's going to drive deficit at a record level. What's your response to guys like Rand Paul?
So this is the push-pull. Our friends on the other side of the aisle are going to say, Medicaid is being cut because we're removing $880 billion of fraud, waste, and abuse, not from Medicaid. This is from the jurisdiction of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which includes Medicaid and basically the rest of the U.S. economy. So you'll hear those things equivocated. Our friends on the left will say $880 billion are being taken out of Medicaid. That's totally false. We're finding $880 billion of fraud, waste, and abuse in all things that fall under the jurisdiction of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which includes Medicaid and also basically the rest of the U.S. economy. And then, unfortunately, some of our friends on the other side don't think that number is quite high enough, and so that's the narrative that you're going to hear in this space, that $880 billion of fraud, waste, and abuse being rooted out of the Medicaid program and the rest of the U.S. economy is not quite enough.
That's Gabe Evans, Congressman from District 8, joining Jeff and Bill Live, talking about the big, beautiful bill that we're looking at Congress. I want to go back to the Medicaid and the work requirements. To your knowledge, what percentage of people receiving Medicaid are working part-time currently? What's the estimate?
So the Wall Street Journal reports that 6 of 10 people, able-bodied working-age adults on that expansion population, again, this is only expansion population, the traditional population, pregnant women, kids, people with disabilities, none of that is touched. We are actually trying to strengthen the program for those folks because they're only getting $1 federal dollar for every $1 state dollar. The expansion population, $9 federal dollars for every $1 state dollar. Wall Street Journal reports that 6 in 10 folks in that expansion population report no earned income.
That 6 in 10?
That's what the Wall Street Journal says.
Because the numbers that I'm seeing are the exact opposite, 180 degrees different. That 64% of people that are receiving Medicaid at least work part-time. Somewhere around 40% of them have full-time employment. And I think that's part of the issue, is that some of these people in that expansion weren't necessarily part of the original idea behind Medicaid, but when they can't afford or make so little money that they can't get health insurance, we're not going to kick them to the street and say, sorry, I got cancer. We are going to treat them one way or another, but if we do it through the emergency room, it's the most expensive way possible. Now, the question I've got for you then, if we don't like the expansion population getting 9-1, why don't we change that ratio, or at least bring the original population up to the 9-1 if that's better? Why don't we change those rules rather than looking at the other way of cutting?
Yeah, because those are then the places where you get into how the state, because so remember, Medicaid is a partnership between the federal government and the states. Feds write a huge portion of the check, but then the state, so in Colorado, it's HCPF, Healthcare Policy and Financing. It's a state-level, cabinet-level department, effectively, that administers Medicaid in the state of Colorado. So if you start adjusting the ratio of federal to state money, then that's the point where things do start to get wonky, and you potentially would actually have lawful beneficiaries of the program who might see their coverage impacted because, the state of Colorado has built their budget for how they're going to actually administer the program. And if I now tell them, hey, I'm actually removing money from the system, now you potentially have issues there because people have have made, the state has made some long-term plans. And so that's why we're focused, again, on the fraud, waste, and abuse in the system to make sure that we're able to be responsible stewards of taxpayer money. And we're able to mirror this off of other programs in the federal government that have work requirements right now. TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, has a work requirement that's working in the federal government. SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, that has a work requirement right now that's working in the federal government. And so by being able to mirror this program off of two other existing programs that work, I think that strikes the right balance of making sure, as you said, folks that are trying to work and are low income, well, guess what? They're not impacted. If they're on Medicaid and if they're working part-time, they're reporting some income. There's no salary that you have to report. You just have to show you're working. Guess what? You stay on Medicaid.
Now, when we look at the idea of that work requirement, when we looked at states that have implemented those work requirements, has it increased, decreased, or what fundamental change has it had on those social service roles? What's been the impact?
And so, so this is the space where there's always going to be discussion about, some states have tried work requirements, but that's not an apples-to-apples comparison because this isn't a state implementing work requirements. This is the federal government implementing work requirements using two other programs where work requirements at the federal level, again, much broader economics of scale, if you will, where those programs do work, again, like TANF and SNAP. And so those are the places that we're looking to because those are places where it's been proven to work and where we can get the accountability that we need in the system to be able to, again, protect all lawful beneficiaries of Medicaid, but do so in a way that's a responsible steward of taxpayer dollars.
That's Congressman Gabe Evans from Congressional District 8. A couple of times you've talked about those lawful recipients. Let's look at that fraud. What percentage have we discovered so far of the Medicare, Medicaid recipients are fraudulent?
So I'll give you just one quick example. You have duplicate enrollees. So somebody lives in New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. And they either sign up for Medicaid in all three states, or there's actually a lot of situations out there where folks don't even realize they have been signed up for Medicaid by other either providers or potentially by the state government. And so when you have somebody who is enrolled in Medicaid in multiple states, you're paying for that individual potentially multiple times. And so one of the reforms that we're looking at is just requiring states to be able to coordinate with each other to remove duplicates from the system. So depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, you may call that, as I do, rightfully reducing fraud, waste, and abuse. Unfortunately, some of our friends on the other side are going to say, oh, look at how many millions of people are being disenrolled. Well, if they're already enrolled in the program 3 or 4 times and you're just taking them down to being enrolled once, nobody actually lost their coverage. All you did was you removed the duplicates and you stopped paying for somebody 3 or 4 times and you went down to just paying for one beneficiary once.
What percentage of the population receiving benefits falls into that category?
I think that number is about 1.6 million.
No, but percentage-wise of the people receiving, not total numbers. I'm looking at the percentage. I'm wondering, because what I'm looking at is, inside the fraud, I'm looking at is it a significant percentage? Because if we don't find a significant percentage of fraud, we're not going to find a significant percentage of savings. That's where I'm going with this. So what percentage of the population receiving these services is fraudulent?
So if you look at the Government Accounting Office, which has been around for a long time, Government Accounting Office says you got $31 billion every year just in improper payments in Medicaid. The bill text for the bill that covers Medicaid is out. It's been officially scored, and so the definitive answer to that is we can do everything that we need to do in the bill to meet all of the different numbering requirements in the space of fraud, waste, and abuse.
But is improper necessarily fraudulent? Couldn't it be a administrative mistake?
But that
couldn't
would
it be
fall
just
under waste and abuse.
Yeah, I know, but that's why being, because
Right.
waste and abuse to me seems more prioritization than anything else. That's why I focus on the fraud. The fraud is the stuff that we can admit normally involves intent. Someone is intentionally trying to deceive
Right.
the program or receive something they're not entitled to.
But you want
That's
all
important.
of it gone. So whether or not they intend it, or like Gabe
here's the thing,
pointed
though.
out,
I understand-
even
no,
if it's...
The issue for me is waste and abuse is an argument over priorities. And so, and Gabe and you and I can all have different priorities, so we can talk about what may or may not be waste. And that, to me, is a different conversation. The idea of someone defrauding the system
Yeah.
is criminal. And that's an issue that everybody should be able to agree on.
You're dealing with budget numbers now, though. So if you want to get into whether or not they planned to abuse the system, or if they accidentally abuse the system, like Gabe pointed out, we're dealing with budget numbers. That's savings to the American taxpayer. And that should be recognized.
Here's the idea, though, but if you're running a business, if you're running something like a grocery store, you know how much of the product has walked out the door for free. You know how much has been stolen, and that is theft. That's illegal. That's what I'm looking at. Those percentages exist, and I'm just looking for a percentage of the recipients.
But I think you said, $31 billion is good savings. Gabe, I'll give you the word here.
But we don't know what the improper is.
Yeah, so that's why we talk about fraud, waste, and abuse. What you're talking about is the difference between, it sounds like, between just waste, what we in law enforcement, remember I was a cop for 10 years, what we in law enforcement would call a mens rea of careless. Your mental state was careless. I wasn't intending to do something bad. I was just very careless and sloppy about it, versus either knowing or reckless, which is a different in law enforcement mental state that comes with a much, much higher penalty because there you're intentionally doing something.
Well, it could. So, Gabe, just to interrupt, though, the idea of waste could also be just based on preferences. And the example that I would give would be what we're seeing in the military, based on focusing on DEI or transgender, everything else. Those are different areas of priorities. But there are people inside the military that thinks it is a waste for us to focus on these DEI initiatives. So that's where I'm talking about as far as waste. Waste is somewhat a personal preference at times.
But wouldn't you say somebody signed up in 2 different states would be waste?
That could be fraud, depending on how they're doing it. And again, it could be waste. But again, and it could be. But that's why I'm looking at it. So if someone's signing up from two different states, that seems to be, it would be illegal to sign up for those. And it may be intentional, it may not be. But that would be fraud. That's where I'm going with that
savings.
one.
That's the point of this. But
I know, but how much of that is fraud? Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. I'm sorry I'm taking us down this road. I'm just looking for the percentage because what I'm worried about is that at the end of the day, we're going to hear about waste, fraud, and abuse, but the actual criminality as far as the fraud on all of these programs is going to be minuscule compared to everything else. And if we're going to be chasing the fraud and the criminality, we better be chasing that.
Gabe, I know you've got to go here. I'll give you that word, and then I want to ask you just about the process. How long is this going to take? When do you guys hope to deliver this? Go ahead.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, what we're looking at is we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer money. So to, I guess, Jeff's point, regardless of whether it's fraud, waste, and abuse, if taxpayer money is being used inappropriately and is ultimately jeopardizing the people, pregnant women, kids, people with disabilities that depend on this program, that's a bad deal. We are fighting our guts out to make sure that pregnant women, kids, people with disabilities, first and foremost, because they're the original population, but then at the end of the day, anybody who's a lawful beneficiary gets the benefits to which they're entitled, and we're doing that by, however you want to draw the distinctions between fraud, waste, and abuse, I guess we can continue to debate that one, but the point is we need to be good stewards of taxpayer money. That's what we're focused on doing. As far as actually delivering this big, beautiful bill, again, we are trying to get this done as soon as possible. The timeline I keep hearing is as close to Memorial Day as possible, so we're leaning forward in the saddle. I am potentially trapped in this committee room where we got a little meeting room off to the side, but I'm potentially here for the next 24 hours because we're about to start our big debate on the Medicaid bill in the Energy and Commerce Committee. So who knows? I may be here 24 hours from now.
Congressman, appreciate all the hard work you're doing on behalf of the people of Colorado.
Yeah, thanks for the time.
And thank you for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you.
I always enjoy being on with y'all.
All right, that's Gabe Evans, Congressman from Congressional District 8. Be sure to give him a follow on X as well, so you can stay up to date on all this stuff. He's going to face a heck of a fight this upcoming election next November. But Gabe for Colorado is his X account, or Rep Gabe Evans, if you want to follow his official X account.
And I'm sorry to pound so much on the idea of the work requirements, and what I'm worried about is that's a placebo. Is that I'm worried that there are a whole bunch of people listening to the show right now. They're going to hear, finally, those people that are getting the government check now have a work requirement, when the majority of them already are working. In fact, Gabe referred to...
and you guys were debating that, whether it's 60 or 40.
Yeah, but everything that I'm seeing is over 60%, including the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal had recently reported that over 90% of the people in the expansion program that Gabe was referring to are actually employed. So that's the issue, is all the numbers I'm seeing is that we've got at least 60 to 65, sometimes as high as 70% of people in these programs working. And so if we're talking about, hey, hey, now those people getting the free government check are now going to have to work. You're only talking about potentially 30% of those recipients.
Yeah,
that's
so,
an issue.
Only if you're measuring it against big numbers. If you look at the budget differently, and like I manage our family budget, you win the budget battle $1 at a time. So why these people were allowed to work at all or allowed to get Medicaid? They're able-bodied. They could work. They never were work.
They may not be able-bodied, though. That's the thing. They may not be, and that's the other part.
No. These are able-bodied people. We're talking specifically about able-bodied people that aren't working. They're receiving Medicaid. That loophole's got to be closed. If it's $1, I'm thrilled. I mean, because that shouldn't have been open in the first place. So to me, it doesn't have to be a massive number for it to be a win.
Yeah,
it just has to be $1.
Yeah, the thing is that what that is, though, is it's not going to give you the savings that you're looking for. And that's the issue, is that I believe there are promises being made that aren't necessarily being kept. One of the things that Gabe talked about was that with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the idea of putting money in pockets and job expansion and things that we didn't see under the previous tax cut. When the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed during the previous Trump administration. So there are some things as far as promises being made that may not be kept. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that there are a whole bunch of people around going, oh, wow, now these people have to work if they're getting the government check, not realizing that the majority of them already are. That sets up false expectations. So when you don't see any changes necessarily, you don't see these big changes in the roles, then you're going to feel disappointed. That's what I'm worried about, is that I feel that the GOP in some areas are setting up false expectations about what the work requirements are going to do and other changes.
And I'm just happy that it's closed at all. Well, you're welcome to join the conversation. Here's the phone line at 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Campos Law text line at 720-819-5115. My big concern, as always, because I get put in this weird camp of being a fiscal hawk because I think you should actually balance out a ledger. I don't like the debt side of this. Whoa, it's a lot of debt. Debt ceiling going up, and
what do you do with the idea that we've heard so many people on the conservative side of the aisle? Now, I disagree with many of the Democrats on how laissez-faire they are with spending, but we have seen a lot of people over the previous 5 years make hay with the idea of debt being out of control. We're killing our kids with this debt, etc. And now when
you go again.
Yeah, now when you have control, we're just playing the same debt game. Does that concern you at all?
Of course. I'm with Rand Paul. We talked about this yesterday. I don't know if we have that audio up. But no, I understand life is full of hard decisions, especially when you're trying to manage the government budget. But guys, at a certain point, we can't just keep doing this, and we got to turn it around. And I don't know if I'd vote for it. I don't know. I struggle with that debt issue, but I appreciate what these guys are trying to do. And I appreciate Gabe Evans coming on and joining the call.
Yeah, that was great.
All right, would love to hear from you. Give us a call again, 303-696-1971, or text us at 720-819-5115. All right, so yesterday was in the 80s. Today's going to be like 87. All right, if your AC's not working, it is getting hot out there. I've done the research for you guys. We had our AC go out. Folks came and said, well, if you're going to replace the AC, you got to replace typically the furnace as well. And we talked to a lot of different groups out there. The folks we chose, L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, and we are thrilled. We got the little heat pump installed, all this stuff. It is amazing. That thing just hums along quietly, cooling, heating our house, because, we're going to be back into cooler temperatures next week. So in Colorado in particular, with that bouncing back and forth, hot and cold, you need a quality system. L&L Heating and Air Conditioning did it right. One-day installation. We had no stress. They called us to follow up. Our home is comfortable no matter what the weather. And with L&L Heating and Air Conditioning, we got peace of mind. Here's some of the deals. Free programmable thermostat or carbon monoxide detector with new furnace or air conditioner installation. No emergency charges, $0 trip fee, price match value guarantee on equipment, free estimates. They're licensed and insured and have a 5-year labor warranty. Everything works great. and our family couldn't be happier. So if you're looking for fast, honest, reliable service, I highly recommend L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. Here's their number, 720-851-1691. That's 720-851-1691. Online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. I'm sure glad we called them. That number again, 720-851-1691. All right, we'll get to your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So, Bill, do you think Jason Crow's wrong when he makes the claim that people are going to lose out on Medicaid? There's going to be cuts to Medicaid.
I think he's a little bit wrong and a little bit right, because I do believe that there are people that are going to lose their health care based on this, and we can decide whether or not we should or should not be giving them or affording them the health care for whatever reason. And again, that can be a list of different priorities. And could it be that, no, you're not working and you should? Could it be a whole bunch of different things? And
he says 13 million people are going to lose health care.
Yeah. And again, I'm not certain on how he's deriving that number. Again, I know that he is going to try to make the number as big as possible. So he and I will probably disagree on who he puts into that camp. But the issue that I've got that I think is somewhat short-sighted, regardless of whether or not we think all these people should be taking the healthcare benefits or not of Medicare and Medicaid, is that as a country, we are not going to refuse to give them healthcare.
Right.
If they show up with whatever it is at the hospital, we're not going to say,
you're not going to die in the streets.
Sorry, yeah, you have to die here. So the problem is, if we are going to say as a society, we are going to provide medical care to someone when they show up at the emergency room or the hospital, regardless of either their immigration status or their insurance, then we are making a choice to provide health care in the most inefficient way possible to those at the lower end. And if they don't have any sort of health care coverage, it means you will delay normal routine care that could prevent some of the big stuff. So we are more likely to have to pay for the large, expensive health problems, and we're going to do it in the most economically inefficient way possible. And that's just my core. I think it's dumb. I'm not sitting here necessarily advocating for socialist healthcare programs or universal payer. I think there are some advantages there, only because if we are not going to deny healthcare coverage to somebody, we damn well are idiots for allowing someone to show up at the hospital and pay for it in the most expensive way possible. You wouldn't do that in a business.
Yeah, and so there's a leap that takes place that's not correct. And in many ways, most of the hospitals still to this day are faith-based and started out as a charitable component to care for people that were poor, couldn't take care of themselves or pay for health insurance, that type of thing. So that exists. But then this leap happens where it's like, okay, well, because the poor need help with health care, let's jump to a socialized medicine program for everybody. And I think there's tons of problems with that bore out in other countries. But
there can be problems.
Jason Crow running out there saying 13 million people are going to lose health. And then he does this video yesterday where he talks about this person that's lost counseling because of these cuts to Medicaid. And as Gabe Evans is pointing out, if you're a child, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're what Medicaid was intended to do, which was the safety net health care, that's not going to be cut. They're not even touching that. It's this expanded area of health care under Obama that they're looking to put some workforce requirements in and then cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse. And Jason Crow runs out there and goes, 13 million people are going to lose. Oh, the sky's falling. And to Gabe's point, as much as I hate the dang debt ceiling going up, all right, if you can't have massive cuts and a huge increase to debt ceiling and an increase in Medicaid.
Yeah,
there's just mathematically that doesn't work out. How do you cut 13 million people off of Medicaid and have an increase in Medicaid spending?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason.
Yeah. The thing is, one, healthcare is getting more and more expensive, and we choose to provide healthcare in some ways in the most inefficient way as far as price. We just do a really bad.
I think it's a whole scheme. It's not transparent. I think you can criticize the entire system there without handing it to the government.
And that's part of the problem. And when Gabe was here, and I appreciate his time, he was talking about the big, beautiful bill. The stuff that he highlighted were all things focused on the middle class, things like standard deduction, Medicaid cuts, looking at work requirements, looking at earned child tax credit for, the earned income child tax credit, stuff like that are all focused on the middle class. The weird part is why, if we're all worried about all these impacts on the middle class, why are we preserving tax cuts for the highest earners? Because if we're looking at it, it in theory would raise revenue. It would increase taxes. So that's the part is hidden inside of this conversation. I think the Democrats focus too much on the higher earners, but inside of that.
Help me understand how giving the money to the government helps the middle class?
No, I'm saying that what Gabe talked about is he said that we are going to face the largest tax increase in history. And what he focused on were things like standard deduction, child care credits, stuff that impacts the middle class. But we never focus on the idea that whether or not those stay or go, it does not impact the highest earners. That's irrelevant to them. But when Gabe comes to us and makes the sell for the big, beautiful bill, he focuses on the stuff that impacts the middle class, not the stuff that impacts the higher earners. And so I think there is some space when the Democrats focus on the higher earners, there's some space there for them to pay more, especially if we are facing a revenue shortfall to the tune of trillions. There seems to be enough there given the amount of wealth that exists at that end. But when Gabe comes here and talks about the big, beautiful bill, he doesn't focus on the tax breaks that are given to the highest earners. He doesn't focus on some of the corporate tax breaks. He focuses on those, and rightly so, on the individuals. So there is a path forward to preserve what Gabe wants, but also get something that maybe the Democrats and someone that, like me, who's unaffiliated, that thinks that maybe some of those people that are at the top end of the earners, and I'm not talking about people making, and one of the problems I have with the Democrats is they start off with high earners with people that are making like 2 million, 5 million, 10 million. No. I'm talking about people that have a lot of zeros. I'm talking a lot of zeros. I would never go after people that are pulling in 2 million, 5 million, even 10 million. I would be going higher up because I think the percentage of their income.
Trump has indicated maybe a possible tax increase for those folks that make more than 2 million a year.
Yeah, and I can't. But again, I wouldn't do 2 million. I go higher, much higher, because that's where I think the money is being consolidated at this point.
The reality with those people are, like anything in life, if you have money, you can pretty much get what you want. Yeah. And so you don't want to pay taxes, you will find ways. It's like I went to grad school for political management, campaign finance issues. And they always find you can come in with any law you want about they will find a way to spend money without it coming back to them to get what they want out of politicians. So
absolutely. Yeah, and just like the idea of the higher earners being able to take out loans against stock value, and then that pay themselves the salary, which again is weird because we allow the stock to be collateral and be used as money in that, but we can't use the stock as payment or income until it is realized. But it can be used as an asset to draw a loan off of. So at one point it's money, but at another point it's not money. So again, but you can only do that if you have enough of the money.
And that's why I go, all right, you want to go try to tax them, they'll find a way around it. All right, let's talk Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis law. If you're hurt in an injury case, you need somebody that represents your values. And I'm guessing if you listen to the show, you got strong values, right? You know what you believe. You want somebody alongside you that has and shares those same values and has a demonstrated track record of 40 years of serving people in Colorado and getting justice for them. That's Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. Listen to these stats in the courtroom. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. Dan's the real deal. And if you need his help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLISLaw.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're welcome to join the conversation, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. And the text messages are hot. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Dude, the text messages are so hot this morning.
Yeah, they are.
Wow. Corey Nelson weighing in on the 747. Suzanne sending me love notes.
Yeah, and I get them from American. So, yeah.
We both get them on both sides.
I know.
This show is so fun.
Well, the ones that I get always have the curse words. Not yours, which is nice enough, and I appreciate that. That at least people that dislike you don't resort to the 4-letter insults, but that's okay.
She did. I think it was a 5-letter insult.
Oh yeah, there are a couple in there. Yeah, yeah. But I get a string of them. Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. But it's interesting. And then and one of the text messages talks about, hey, it's only 100 days in. Can't they find the fraud, etc. Yeah, and I'm giving them the time, but they've made all these trumpets and all these statements about finding the fraud and getting it out. And I think that's why, and I will continue to try to separate the two, because for me, waste and abuse is different. That's prioritization in many cases, where fraud is a criminal action. And I think they should be separated for that. And I think it's important to separate them, because if we do have, because the idea is that I feel that there is a kind of an assumption by the American electorate that there is millions, if not billions, of fraud out there. Things that people are asking for, signing up for, and not are entitled to, and are actually illegal. That they are misrepresenting themselves and they're getting access to government funds illegally. And that would be different than the government creating a program for underwater Native American basket weaving that you disagree with. That may not necessarily be fraud, but you could see that as waste or abuse. And what I'm looking for, and why it's important to me, is I want to see the criminality. And so not only do I want to see the fraud identified, I want to see Pam Bondi following through. And if I don't see Trump's Department of Justice following through on all of these fraud allegations, I've got some serious questions about if the fraud existed.
Well, I'm just thrilled to see a different direction in government prioritizing taxpayers and what's right with regards to spending their hard-earned money as opposed to just giving it out. I mean, like you saw with Tyler O'Neill when we had him on in the 7 o'clock hour. There is an effort to bring people into this country illegally, to provide them with services, to turn them into Democrat voters. It was all part of a plan. That's being disrupted. And so, yeah, go after the fraud, 100%. But the waste and the abuse, and then expose what progressives were trying to use the government to do, all of that matters to me. All right, in the 9 o'clock hour, speaking. Oh, my gosh. Guys, this gets me going in ways you are never going to want to miss. All right? And Bill, this may go back to me being 12 years old and watching the Simpsons monorail episode.
Uh-oh.
Because I'm trying to figure out why I get so worked up about this. But rail. I think passenger rail when it comes to RTD, and now the expansion of these stupid trains to places like, Granby or Trinidad, Pueblo. Who needs to take a train to Trinidad? Who is paying taxpayer dollars? And when I started to dive into RTD and the amount of money we spend on this program and how it doesn't even close match the amount of revenue that comes in, you're going to be shocked. And Jared Polis yesterday trumpeting this new rail expansion. We're going to have a train to Trinidad. What the hell do we need a train to Trinidad for? And when we get into what California spent on their high-speed rail and the waste, and they got nothing but a bridge out of it? Oh, my God. Okay. All right, we're getting to that 9 o'clock hour. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Hopefully Jeff will tell us how he really feels.
President Trump met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman this morning on an official state visit to Saudi Arabia. It's the first stop on his 4-day swing through the Middle East, during which several deals and agreements are expected to be announced as the president travels with business leaders, including Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Alice Barr with more.
This trip underscores how influential this region has become economically. Right after President Trump took office, the Crown Prince pledged to make $600 billion in investments in the United States over the next 4 years. The U.S. is hoping to secure even more during talks today. His next stop is Qatar, where the ruling family has offered the president a luxury Boeing jumbo jet to use as Air Force One.
GOP Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky says Trump has no business accepting a gift like that.
The Constitution in Article 2 talks about the president can't take emoluments or gifts from foreign leaders. And so there is a provision in the Constitution that says you can't do this.
Federal employees cannot accept gifts over $20. The annual inflation rate dropped to 2.3% in April, lower than expected and the lowest since February of 2021. Markets had expected the consumer price index to increase to 2.4%. The White House is blaming the Biden administration for problems at Newark International Airport. More from Brian Shook.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the airport is using old equipment that looks like it's off the set of the movie Apollo 13, and that's dangerous.
The outage also interrupted the phone line and radio frequencies for a very short period. This is how controllers talk to pilots.
Duffy said former transportation head Pete Buttigieg ignored the problems with the airport's telecommunication lines. Duffy said there are some temporary software fixes in place, but warned it will take time to modernize the airport.
I'm Michael Kastner.
Portions of the following program are pre-recorded.
Your 710 5-day
Portions
forecast.
of the following program are pre-recorded.
KNUS Denver. Challenging everything.
I gotta talk to you, you stuck-up asshole.
Your opinions, your patience.
What's your point?
Sometimes even the laws of logic.
I just can't make up my mind to believe it.
Jeff and Bill on News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well, it's a little after 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We're going to keep it locomotive this hour as we talk about Denver, Colorado, expanding its train service. Look, I don't oppose trains for skiing, okay? That makes sense to me. Everybody's going one place. But, Bill, I drive by that RTD light rail. That thing's empty 99% of the time. Nobody's on that. At one time, I was like, you know what? I am going to take the light rail down to the Rockies game. I'm going to park. I'm just going to go through that experience. Train never showed up. Waited a whole extra hour for the next train to come. So really? That was fun. That missed. And then today, our own news was just talking about disruptions on light rail. Does anyone actually take light rail out to DIA? That sounds like a big gamble, especially if you're trying to make a flight.
I've had family members that have done it, and it's been decent. It's been okay there and back. And it's been easier to pick them up off the train at one of the stops that is closer to the house than to drive all the way out to DIA. So, yeah, that has been, not necessarily, but again, not game-changing because not having friends and family coming in out of town all the time. So, I mean, that is less than over the past 4 years, probably 5 times I can think of that we've done that. So, and that would be both either drop them off to get to DIA or pick them up. So It's not one or the other. And my family and I, we do often take the light rail down to downtown. We'll oftentimes work our way into downtown, especially doing something at Pepsi Center or at Mile High, because I refuse to call it the other name. So that's where it's been useful. Also, going down for theater, stuff like that, when it drops you off in the theater district. Those have been real bonuses to my family going there and back because not having to deal with traffic, not having to deal with parking and paying for parking and stuff. And it's been less expensive. But what we aren't are daily commuters. And for a while, one of the kids in my family, while they were working into it'd be secondary. It wasn't okay. Max was going to get a certificate for accounting at Pickens Tech Center, and so there was a way through light rail that he could. Not Pickens Tech Center. Sorry, this was previously. He's got the one out there, Pickens. He got another one that has to do with business finance that he got from Metro. And so he could navigate the train to get down to Metro and back. And that was good. That was a nice solution. It was easy for him to get there and to go back. But the number of times that myself or anybody in my family has been a daily commuter on the bus, very infrequently. And that's the problem. In
D.C., I was a daily commuter. We lived right next to the Metro. I rode that every single day. Here's a little audio from
this is
passenger train.
Imagine going from Fort Collins to Pueblo in under 3.5 hours without ever having to sit in I-25 traffic. The state of Colorado is trying to make that possible with the Front Range Passenger Rail Project, a $14 billion proposal created to connect 9 major cities and regions across the state. The line would follow the I-25 corridor, linking cities like Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Pueblo, with a long-term vision to expand into Wyoming and New Mexico. Officials at CDOT have proposed this concept for over a decade, but it wasn't until 2021 that the Front Range Passenger Rail District was formally established, ushering the way for a formal service development plan to be created. The route builds on historic rail lines that once connected these same cities but haven't seen regular service in over 50 years. With their latest revision now complete, the team is asking for community feedback on the recommended route, service frequency, travel times, and even top train speeds. The online open house is live through Sunday, June 15th, giving you the chance to weigh in before the next phase begins. Visit the link in our bio to leave them feedback and let us know what you think of the plan below.
So, you're going to have trains all along I-25. Listen to RTD's financial overview, and then, Nick, I'm going to get to you in a second. 2022, RTD's total operating expenses were approximately $664 million. Guess how much they made off of fares?
I don't know.
$75.3 million. That's 11.3% of operating expenses. 11%. Historically, RTD has aimed for a 30% fare recovery ratio. However, this has declined over the years. In early 2024, 4.4%. 4.4%. That means everything else that's covered by RTD is taxpayer. This is a boondoggle of a money pit that nobody rides. We are a car town. Nobody goes to Colorado Springs on a train. And then what? Then what? You're going to take a cab over to Pikes Peak to ride the train there? There's not enough cabs around for everybody. So there's not enough Uber drivers to facilitate this. This doesn't make any sense. Anyways, it frustrates me. Join the conversation if you like. 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. My favorite, though, is this is not a high-speed train either. Did you notice in that audio that it was the same amount of time it takes to drive from Fort Collins to Pueblo anyways? 3+ hours? Congratulations. It's the same amount of time. It chugs along at 60 miles an hour. You just don't have traffic, and you don't have to deal with driving. Waymo's going to solve these problems, not high-speed rail. Let's go to the phone lines. Nick in Denver. Good morning, Nick. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hey, good morning, Nick.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I am now a proud rider of RTD for a little bit longer while my car languishes in some shop, but that's another story. Here's the basic economics of buses that has been around since ever. You have to have a certain population density for a transit system to work, and quite often we don't have that. That's why they never pencil out. Secondly, when I ride the bus, the amount of waste the way the buses run is unbelievable. For instance, RTD runs the same size bus all day long. What they should be doing is using the bigger buses during rush hour and the smaller van types for the off-peak hours. But they don't do that because the bigger buses waste a lot of fuel and take a lot more maintenance than the smaller. In other words, they're not very flexible. And the other thing is they need to change the way the buses are run to make it viable.
And as far as the cost is concerned, if past experience is any guide, you know that if they say it's going to cost, $14 billion only, they always use only $14 billion, you know it's going to be 3 times that.
Yep, that's exactly right. And Nick, my question to everybody else is, where does this work well? I mean, it clearly didn't work in California. They spent billions of dollars to the point where you got a handful of bridges that have been. That thing's been going on for decades. They can't even get that off and running. And then if you look at the East Coast corridor, Amtrak is all government subsidized because no one could afford the actual tickets to manage this stuff. And even in that case, it's an okay experience. I would go between New York and D.C. That was a lot better than having to wait at an airport and then get from the airport back into the city. That was always a headache. So when there was that big of a population, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and New York, Boston, that kind of makes sense. But Trinidad, what the heck are we going to? Why do we need a train to Trinidad? Who's going down there for what?
They used to have sex operations there. They used to have sex change operations.
It was the capital of the world.
Yes, I don't know what happened because
the doctor quit.
Lately.
The doctor quit.
Oh, he quit.
Yeah,
well, we don't need the train then. We don't need the train there to Trinidad.
I don't know why. It's just I don't get it. It's not working here in Denver. Why expand it out? Nick, I sure appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Gosh, we got full phone lines, so jump in. Nick's line is open, 303-696-1971. You know who's doing good policy? Well, we're talking about bad train policy. People doing good public policy, the Colorado Farm Bureau. Whether you pulled out your skis or snowmobiles this last winter, it was a great year for winter fun. But the snow means even more to Colorado agriculture. And I want you to know that our state's farmers and ranchers are doing their part to protect our future water resources. The people of Colorado agriculture always have conservation, efficiency, and reuse top of mind when it comes to water use. As the metro area continues to grow, Colorado Farm Bureau leads talks with state policymakers about preserving water for all areas of the state as pressure on the water system grows. It's going to take all of us to find a solution. My friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau are leaders in water conservation and water policy. They understand how to balance water for crops and water for families, and they're doing more with less. You can do your part. I recommend you join and become a member today. Go to coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com to join. Here's a question I have for you all. All right, so millions of dollars, billions of dollars being spent on these trains. Would you rather have better roads in Colorado?
Oh, the question is, would we? That's the thing is, I'm not convinced.
You think with our weather it would be a problem, or what?
No, I'm not convinced that our legislators would spend the money there. So it would be great in a perfect world to say an either or.
But for taxpayers, if you had to spend, what did the audio say, $14 billion on trains all up and down I-25 or just better roads, where would you rather have the money?
I mean, I'd go with better roads, but the issue for me is that like the better roads would, in theory, include my neighborhood roads, which are not covered by the train. So again, I'm making a choice that benefits me because as I outlined, the possibility of me using this train on the regular is slim to none.
Right.
So the benefit I derive from it is easy because I will always choose the benefit, and more times than not, that helps me personally. Most people will. And so roads would benefit more people personally than the idea of the train. That's why I think that portions of the idea of a train are a good idea, as we talked about earlier, getting it up to the mountains. I think that is an absolute priority, but going south into the state, I don't think is a priority. However, here's how I would change it. If you wanted to say you want to run a train to Canyon City, to Trinidad, even a train down to Grand Junction, the only way you are going to get a significant number of Denver residents to abandon their car and to get in that train is if it's high speed. It's the only way.
Yeah, right.
If you can get there quicker, that's it. And you outlined it very, very accurately, my friend, in that wrap-up where we had in the video, where the video is outlining that it will take you the exact same amount of time. And so what it's telling you is you can spend the exact same, your time investment to go from, and we'll just do Pueblo to Denver. According to the video, your time investment for Pueblo to Denver is going to be the same. But using the train is going to be more complicated and requires more steps. The average human is going to say, easy mode activated, I'm sitting in my car. If it's going to take me just as long to get there, and now I have to figure out transportation when I'm there, it's not going to put me exactly where I want to, and then I don't have the ability to commute around town when I get there, that is too much of a negative for you to get me there at the exact same time. If you want me to view this as a savings, or you want me to make different choices, you better get my ass there quicker. Otherwise, you're costing me time and effort. And I've shared the story on the air here, and I'm not going to go into the long one. But years ago, when our oldest was a little tiny toddler, we decided to take the train, the Amtrak, to Grand Junction in the summer, not knowing there are rules based on the speed of the train when the heat gets above 80 degrees. So the train had to go 30 miles an hour. Okay? Let that sink in. To all of you in traffic this morning, myself, my wonderful bride, and my sometimes cranky oldest son, when he was just a toddler, as in holding the fingers, walking up and down the aisles, went from Denver to Grand Junction at 35 miles an hour. 35 miles an hour. It is a position of torture that most humans should not be subjected to. It was a complete and total waste. So I understand the pain point with the train. You don't get me there quicker, nobody from Denver is getting on the train. Nobody.
And they're going to spend a lot of money to do it. That's the other part. It drives me nuts. Is you're going to spend all this money. It's this greeny, lefty vision of living that's just not a reality. It's like downtown with the bike lanes. I go down, nobody's riding bikes, maybe one or two people, and I'm downtown all the time at these protests. It's not like there's a horde of people coming to work on their bikes. No one goes to work downtown anyways. But the idea that we had to cut out all of these lanes for these bike lanes, it's just, gosh, they're so agenda-driven. They're willing to spend all this money, and nobody uses it.
And if you wanted to do the bike lanes, and again, I'm kind of the person that I don't want you to put the bike lanes in traffic. One, it constricts traffic flow. Two, you can run over the bicyclists. Put them on the Cherry Creek bike path. Improve the bike paths there and put the bike paths outside of normal traffic. And in fact, you can make some of it, one, more scenic, but also get them around some of the usual problems you have with commuting. And also, tell me this. So you want us that is in one of the states that has one of the best outdoor recreation possibilities in the entire country. We have more recreational possibilities for us in the outdoors than many, many, many states do. And here, because of that, we have a lot of people that like to get out and hike and bike. How many of us are going to say, I'm hoping today I can sit in my bike and suck off of somebody's tailpipe while I'm going the 6 miles to work? How many of us are doing that? How many of us are signing up for a 20 mile an hour? Let's say you're trying to get your miles in. I'm going to get on my bike. I'm going to go 20 miles to my job. But the entire time while I'm doing it, I got to sit next to the cars and breathe the exhaust. Who in their right mind that is really concerned about their personal health, someone that'll get on their bike and ride 20 miles, is going to get and sit behind that car next to it during traffic? You're not going to. That's the issue, people. Think this through.
If you don't have Bill Thorpe, it's not worth doing in Colorado. All right, let's go to Robert in Denver. Good morning, Robert. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, Robert, you taking this train? What do you think, man?
No.
Good.
Couple of snark points, couple of legit points. The legit points are this. Your previous caller hit on it. If they say $14 billion, it's going to be more like $44 billion. This is just a fact. We can look at any project that has been undertaken around the country for something like this, and it will never come in on budget. It will never come in anywhere close to budget, and it will never come anywhere close to time. California is a great example. They've been working on that train out there for 20 years. It was supposed to be done in 3, and they have how many miles of functional track, and they're 10 or 12 times over their initial budget. I mean, those are just indisputable facts. The second one is the logistics of it. They say they want to track this thing down the I-25 corridor. Well, as it happens, I'm driving down I-25 right now, and I'm looking off to either side of me as safely as I can in traffic. And where in the hell are you going to put this track? How many businesses are going to get foreclosed on? How many properties are going to be seized by eminent domain? How many people are going to be forced out to accommodate a rail track? And the third is passengers, okay? How many people are commuting from Fort Collins to Pueblo for work? I bet you I can count them on one hand and have a finger or two to spare.
Yeah,
okay?
I think you're right. Now, I do know some people that commute from either Monument or even the north side of Colorado Springs into the south side of Denver. But again, if we put them all onto a train, it's still not going to be full.
No, not even close. And I know people that commute from Fort Collins and Greeley down to the north side of Denver or even into downtown from time to time for work as well. So that's not an impossibility, but the stretch of the track is going to be reliant purely on tourism because there are not enough commuters that will have to run that to make it even feasible to come close to breaking even. It will be just another RTD subsidized project where the taxpayers are putting 70, 80, 90% of the bill in perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, it drives me crazy to drive into Denver on I-25 and to see this empty RTD train constantly. Empty. Oh, yeah. The only time I may see them full with people is around a Rockies or a Nuggets or a Broncos game. Other than that, they're completely empty. And when I tell you that...
We park at Mineral Station all the time to go to concerts at Ball Arena because I don't want to pay $27 or whatever the hell it is to park at Ball Arena.
You and me, my man. You and me. I do the same.
But, I mean, knowing that RTD only pulls in, at best, 11% of its operating costs via fare revenue, but right now you're looking at 4.4%. 4.4%. That's 90% of the costs of RTD in these trains and these buses is paid for by taxpayers who don't use them.
Well, and that's my big concern right there. Is even if we said, hey, let's live in a unicorn world for a second, and they come in on time and on budget, $14 billion. Okay, that's your construction costs. What are your operating costs on an annual basis? Another couple $100 million, at least another couple $100 million. How much of that is going to be offset and recouped by fares? And I'm guessing it's going to be about the same percentage as what RTD recoups.
Now, Robert,
10%, give or take.
Now, Robert and Jeff, I want to change the conversation based on something that a text message had, and I think it's an interesting intellectual exercise. Let's assume that it's not the regular passenger rail, but let's assume high-speed rail, okay? Again, it's just an assumption for the conversation. If we said we were going to do high-speed rail up and down like the I-25 corridor, could you make the argument that maybe it would provide some housing relief to people that maybe could live in Fort Collins or even as far south as Pueblo, finding lower housing costs, but then using high-speed rail to get into Denver? Normal commute wouldn't make any sense, but high-speed, does that change the equation at all?
The opportunity to do that sounds good on paper, and it's actually a complete legit argument. Absolutely a legit argument. But again, I get back to the logistics of it. Where are you going to put the rail? Okay, if you can get Fort Collins to Pueblo in 2.5, 3 hours or something like that, then that's awesome. I mean, it ain't quite the Star Trek teleporter or nothing like that, but we're getting closer. But where are you going to put it? Because again, I'm driving down I-25. I'm looking at Sportsman's Warehouse on one side, and I'm looking at the car dealerships, and I'm looking at the houses and the businesses on the other side, and that spreads out for another several miles to either side of I-25.
Yeah.
So who's going to lose out in order to construct this rail system?
And Robert, that is an excellent point, because you realize that most development happens near highways. When you're bringing highways going from Denver to Pueblo, most of the development that you're going to see, and that's what we hear from our city founders and developers of the idea. Jeff and I have talked about the idea of them putting high-density condominiums and apartment complexes, mandating them for certain areas in town, but they have to be built right near the highway. That's why, is because of the access. Yes, you're right, man. You're absolutely right.
And that's, these apartments, these houses, again, who gets foreclosed on? Who gets shut out by eminent domain? And even if you're not getting closed out by eminent domain or something like that, are you going to take 25 cents on the dollar? Because that's what they're going to offer you at best.
And best, here, look at this, Robert. Let's say that you own a house that is within that 1 mile or a mile and a half of I-25 where they're going to run the, not going to run it right next to I-25, but right near it. What does it do to your property value? When you bought that house 10 years ago, and now you got a train running right near you. What's that do to the property value of your house?
Pola says we're going to use existing track. So they want to use the existing track, but that prevents them from getting into high speed.
Yes.
So it's going to be slow.
Existing track. That track that runs down Santa Fe next to I-25, that track is 100 years old.
Yeah.
You know why there's only about 2 trains a week that run on it? Because it can't sustain the operation anymore.
And it's cargo, and they run cargo. So if stuff spills, nobody gets killed.
So, guys, I just don't go anywhere unless I'm going somewhere specific, right? So I'm taking a kid to soccer, or I'm running an errand. I don't just jump on a train and go to Trinidad. I don't know who does that.
No.
And, once you get there, how you get from the train station to wherever you're going in Trinidad, someone pointed out in Craig.
You're renting a car or taking an Uber or something like that.
Yeah, someone pointed out Craig, Colorado's got a pizza joint and a bowling alley. It's a mining town, and the Democrats shut down the mine there. So what are we doing in Craig?
No, and these are all valid points. Your previous caller also touched on another really good point, and that's population density. If you look at a city like New York, you look at a city like D.C., Philadelphia, something like that, not only the population within the cities themselves, but their proximity to other cities that are relatively close make it a really good idea to have some kind of a mass transit system. We used to call it the milk train that ran from D.C. to Washington, or to New York, rather, excuse me. And you get it for about $3 if you took the overnighter. It was great. It was cheap. But when you're talking 11, 12, 13 million people in a couple of metropolitan areas that are within a couple of hours of each other, then it makes sense because you've got people that are transiting back and forth on that.
Well,
the entire population of Colorado doesn't match half of Manhattan.
That's exactly right. Robert, great call. Sure, appreciate it. Robert's line will be open 303-696-1971. Great text message from 5453. They are pointing out that Trinidad does have a minor league baseball team, which might be more enjoyable than watching the Rockies.
At least you can see a team that can win. That might be the thing. And again, how perfect is it to kind of just, as an idea, thinking that the people in charge of Colorado right now decided that what we need to do is to have a train that's going to transport you around the state at exactly the same speed you could drive. That in the meeting, in their brainstorming planning session, on the big whiteboard, and when they're talking about the idea that we're going to save money because we're using the existing track, and Robert's right, a lot of track's old, so some of it's going to have to be replaced, especially if you're going to want to run more than, 30 miles an hour when it's hot, which you can't do. So either your train, you're going to have to replace a lot of that track, or your train is going to be going as fast or slower than traffic. Who in the right mind sat in that meeting and went, that's a great idea. That sounds wonderful. We're going to take people and move them around the state just as slow as we do now. That's great.
To
just
Grand
seriously.
Junction, that is burned into you.
Oh, it hurts. It is still a scar that is very, very deep and incredibly painful. And that's why this type of stupidity drives me nuts, because nobody in this planning meeting before they rolled out their big project said, aren't we moving them at the same speed? We just drive the car at, which is stupid.
If you read the article, it's all like, we went to Europe and loved the trains, and we can have that too.
And what we're not going to do is build trains like they have in Europe. That's wonderful job, guys. That's like saying I went to McDonald's and I loved how they did their hamburgers, and I'm going to make them differently. Idiots.
All right,
seriously.
We'll get to Bill and Parker, Fred, and Longmont. You guys are up next. We do have one open line. Join the conversation, 303-696-1971. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Commuter trains all along the Front Range. So you can take that train to Trinidad at taxpayer dollars, billions of dollars. RTD only recouping its costs at about a rate of 10%. So 90% of what they already do is covered by people who don't use them. So why not just continue to expand it?
Yeah. And do they... I don't know. I mean, what was the market research like for this as well? Because what worries me is they talk about trains to the mountains, but they run once a day? Given the problems that we've got on I-70? I mean, okay, once a day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday? You're trying to... I'm assuming that this train into the mountains would help alleviate congestion on I-70, and your brilliant solution is to run the stupid train once? How the hell does that help? How in the hell does that possibly help anything? Again, bunch of idiots in charge of this state. It's ridiculous.
Bill's come around to my point of view about the people leading the state of Colorado. Let's go to Bill and Parker. Good morning, Bill. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hey, good morning, Bill. You were talking to me off the air about you visited Paris recently. Talk to us about those bike lanes.
Yeah, so, and by the way, let me start by saying population density is the reason why Colorado's never going to shine in this area. I think it was pointed out, there are more people in Manhattan, which I think is about 14 square miles, than there are in Colorado. So it's just an order of magnitude, or several orders of magnitude, and that's what you need is density. Yeah, so the first time I visited Paris was many decades ago, and I hadn't been back for a while. I just got back last week, and they have completely revamped their surface transportation, put in bus lanes all over the place, and those are only open to taxis and buses, not to private cars or Ubers or delivery vehicles. And they've put in these bike lanes, and I'll tell you what, I ride the Cherry Creek Bike Trail. I know what 15 miles an hour on a bike looks like. These people are doing 15 at the low end, 15 to probably 20, 25. A lot of electric bikes. And because what happens if you have bike lanes, that it immediately takes out of the mix anybody who's not physically fit. As soon as they hit a hill, just think of that little hill on Lincoln going in towards Colfax, towards Broadway rather. There's a little hill there around 8th, I think. It's not much of a hill, but that'll take people right out of the mix. When you've got electric bikes, they get rid of all the hills. So in Paris, what has happened, and I wouldn't have predicted this. I mean, there were just thousands of people on bikes at any minute. If you're at a corner, first of all, you literally, I'm not kidding, take your life in your hands if you step into that bike lane without looking. It'd be just like stepping into traffic. You could get hit hard. And if you stand in a corner between lights, signals, you will see probably a good 24 cyclists go by in both directions in almost any corner in Paris. It's unbelievable how many people are using that. And why do they use that? Well, cars are out of the question. I mean, they're just impossible to move around. And then you got them, which is a complete nightmare. You got the metro, which is excellent, but there's a lot of blind spots on the metro. There's a lot of areas where you're several hundred yards from a metro station.
Paris was created before cars existed. Denver, on the other hand, was essentially created around the time the car came into existence. So that's why all the streets are straight. If you've ever grown up on the East Coast, we lived in Virginia for 6 years, and that was all designed when everything was horse and buggy. So you just have windy roads everywhere. Yeah. Colorado's built on a grid because it's flat, and it came into existence roughly around the time cars did.
I'm a little worried about this phone call I've got from Bill right now. Bill, you're kind of worrying me because I'm super worried that someone in charge of Colorado planning is listening right now, and they're like, oh, so Bill says smaller roads and no parking. Aha! We need to shrink the roads. If we just cut the roads in half, then we can force everybody into bicycles.
Parking is a nightmare. Yes. Anywhere in Europe, it's a nightmare. But look at Manhattan. I mean, to your point, Jeff, Lower Manhattan was built, in the pre-revolutionary days, and it looks like it's a bunch of go paths. But you get above whatever it is, 14th Street, and then it's a complete grid all the way up. And so you've got a mixture of the old and the new there. And again, if you're going to drive, well, Manhattan's a nightmare to drive in as well. But downtown Manhattan is the worst nightmare. In the financial district is horrible. But I guess my point was the bike has been embraced over there in a way I wouldn't have predicted. They've got 1 million of those rental bikes, those, I forget, like the ones we have here, the Lime and all that stuff, and people on scooters all over the place, electric, and it's just more convenient by far to get around that way, I guess, if you're a native, I don't know about tourists, but if you're a native, it's just the most practical way to get around. And that could work in Denver. Again, with the electrification of bikes, could be.
Yeah, but it would have to be, as you talked about, population density. It would have to be the density size of something like Manhattan. So you're probably looking, Bill, and thank you so much for the call, of something like you go from the downtown metro and you spread out and go east, probably maybe to where Cherry Creek is, maybe, and you go about the same distance on the other side, and that's about all you got. That's the circle where I believe a bike-centered transportation for downtown works. Anything outside of that, I think it becomes too onerous, it's too long of a ride, and the car makes a lot more sense.
All right, appreciate the call. Bill's line's open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Are there any listeners out there that can convince me to visit Trinidad via train? What am I going to do? What do you do in Trinidad?
Yeah, I know. What are you doing to get there? And how long did it take you to wait for an Uber? How many Ubers are there in Trinidad? 2?
It's like Craig too.
Yeah,
it's like anytime you go to those small little. And I was a mountain guide for 5 summers. I lived up in the mountains. You don't take a cab anywhere.
No, you can't. Because, again, go to Trinidad, they got probably 2 Uber drivers. So the one, if you're driving there and there's one other person that's already got the Uber, like, nope, Steve's coming here in a second. Just wait for Steve. That's all you got to do.
That's right. You all get off the train and there's one Uber driver.
One Uber. Yeah. Hope you guys like to sit on each other's laps.
To go where? Where do you go in Trinidad?
What are you doing?
All right, Fred Longmont. Good morning. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, good morning, Fred.
Morning, guys. People talk about the fiasco that's going on in California, but don't forget the big dig in Boston, too, that was a joke.
Oh, yeah.
But what I wanted to talk about was what happened to Longmont. We were told that we were going to get high-speed rail to Denver. We've been paying taxes for that for years and years, and they keep putting it off, and now I think it's in the century of 50 centuries from now. So when you guys talk about building or giving any money to RTD, leave Longmont out. We've been screwed bad enough, and we want our money back.
Yeah, you guys were promised a train that you never got. That is a pile of crap. And the fact that nobody talks about it that's in charge of RTD, they just kind of wash their hands of it, that's atrocious.
Did they just decide, no, we're not going to build it? Or is it just being delayed?
Actually, I think now Fred may have more information on this, but I think they have taken the official approach, and this is what we hear from the government, is la, 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 I'm not listening. I think that's officially what the position is right now.
Well, and the thing is, too, they talk about how to get to Denver. Well, I used to ride the bus to Denver. I worked downtown. I could ride the bus, RTD, be there in less than an hour. Now they're talking about maybe going from Longmont through Boulder, then to Denver, which would take as long or longer.
Yes.
So we don't need examples in California. Let's just look in our own backyard.
No, Fred. Okay, that is perfect. And I thank you for bringing that up, because I think that shows the bass-ackwardness of how they're trying to solve this. Is you talked about the idea of, again, the commute time, of how much time it was going to take you to go from Longmont to downtown, and that's why for you it was acceptable to take the bus, even though it was less convenient, getting down to the bus stop and then walking to work and then getting back home. It did take a little more time. However, as soon as they start running that thing through Boulder, it eats up all or any of the time that you save. And so now it has made your commute more difficult, more complicated, and longer. Who chooses that, Fred? Who chooses that?
I'll tell you where the solution's going to be, and I've ridden in these. And guys, this is the solution. It's Waymos. Waymos are going to get rid of garages. You'll be able to order it. It just rolls right up to you. Because, look, people are going to particular places.
Yeah.
They're going to soccer fields. And I would, if I lived, we live out in the sticks, but if we lived closer and it was, all right, kids, jump in the car. We're going to take the Waymo to your soccer game. Dad doesn't have to drive. I don't have to worry about parking. We took those Waymos in Phoenix, Scottsdale. They were amazing. It was so relaxed. It was awesome. But it took me to a particular place. I don't go to Trinidad. I go to the train station.
You know what's interesting about that? Now, Fred, I got to ask you this. So Jeff's talking about Waymos. And so if you had to guess in the test markets where Waymo has been, what would you guess? How much of the percentage of the travel for, Lyft, Uber, or choosing Waymo, what percentage do you think the consumers are choosing the robo-taxis versus the human-driven, either, cabs or Lyft or Uber? What do you think the percentage breakdown? If you were just guessing, what would you think, Fred?
I couldn't even begin because I don't understand Waymo, so that's beyond my league.
Oh, okay. It's just robot taxis.
Self-driving cars, yeah.
But let me bring up another point. Okay, so you're on the train. Let's say it takes you to Denver. Now, let's say I want to go to the west side or the east side or someplace where there isn't a convenient bus service or something. I can take my car and go down there and go anywhere I want. Or let's say I decide I'm going to go to Denver, but I think, oh, well, I'm here. Maybe I'll decide to go out to Cherry Creek, or maybe I'll decide to go out to somewhere else. How do I know I'm going to have the bus service or the train service to get to those places?
Right.
Yeah.
You've got to, as I think, Billy, you mentioned earlier, you've got to be, your business has to be located or your destination has to be within, let's say, a few blocks of where that train goes.
Yeah, or it's inconvenient.
Now,
Hey,
do you
thank
want to
so much,
answer
Fred.
the
Appreciate
question
phone call.
about the Waymo?
The Waymo. What percentage, Fred, do you think it would be if you had to guess? Now, these are robot taxis. What percentage in a market like Austin are people choosing robo-taxis versus the human-driven cars, either being cabs or Lyft and Uber? What do you think?
They're going to be a wild, stupid guess, but let's say 10% for the sake of discussion.
I say 60.
And this is the fantastic part. I love the fact that Fred called in because, yes, wild and stupid is exactly what we do on the show. So I appreciate that so much.
What is the number?
It's 2/3, 65 to 70% is
Yeah.
what you're looking at.
Because
and so we're choosing
really
robo-taxis.
cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the robo-taxis are eating the lunch
Yeah.
of Uber and Lyft and everybody
They
else.
will.
Yeah, they will.
You're going to have the technological hurdles of getting over it, but we wrote in it. And it was relaxing.
Yeah.
It was cool. I didn't have a conversation with anybody.
Yep, exactly. Hey, Fred, thanks for the phone call,
appreciate it. Jay, we'll get to you next. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Monorail, 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 monorail.
Such a good
That's what. Oh, Jared Polis and the rest of them are trying to sell you taxpayers train lines to Trinidad and Wyoming. Taxpayer funded.
Yeah.
And RTD already requires about 90% of taxpayer funding just to continue to operate what it already has. It only collects revenue at a rate of about 10% of what it spends. So let's go to Jay in Highlands Ranch. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Jay. And I got a quick question. Do you think we could bring some of those possibly illegal fireworks from Wyoming back home on the train? Asking for a friend.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
good. Thanks for a great conversation and listening to Bill's train ride over to Grand Junction. Brought back some memories for me. So I used to be in transportation. Well, yeah, nightmares more or less. But there are 6 things in transportation that help the consumer kind of pick his form of transit. And that's the point of origin, the points intermittently, the points of destination, the price, the parameters of time, and the purpose of the trip.
Yeah.
And as I listened to all the different people call in here, I heard all of those, including parking. And I lived through the nightmare of the monorail discussions to the mountains. And the reason that it never went anywhere is there's no mass and density in the mountains. And it would have dramatically changed the growth along the I-70 corridor. Why would you not live in Vail or live in Summit County and work in downtown Denver if you could make it to downtown in 45 minutes to an hour on the monorail? So it would dramatically change how we developed our mountain communities.
Jay,
I thought about that. Jay, I wish we had more time with you, man. Give us a call another day.
Wish we had more time.
We got to talk about this, because I'd love to pick your brain.
We
but
got
I wish
the
we had more
smartest
time,
listeners. All right,
it's amazing.
We'll be back tomorrow. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.